The roar of nearly 20,000 spectators rolled through the stadium like distant thunder. Cameras flashed from every corner of the grandstands as television crews followed the athletes making their way toward the starting line. The warm summer air carried the smell of fresh rubber from the track mixed with anticipation. For most of the crowd, it was another championship race. For Vanessa Jones, it was supposed to be the race that brought her one step closer to the dream she had carried since she was a little girl. The stadium announcer's voice echoed through the loudspeakers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the women's 200-meter championship final. One by one, the athletes were introduced. Lane 1. The crowd applauded. Lane 2. Another wave of cheers. Vanessa stood quietly behind Lane 4, bouncing lightly on the balls of her feet. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. Relax, she whispered to herself. She rolled her shoulders, then looked toward the sky. Thank you for bringing me this far. Her coach, Lance Williams, stood just beyond the fence near the finish line. He folded his arms and smiled. You've already won, he whispered under his breath. Standing beside him was his wife, Letitia. You know she still gets nervous. Lance chuckled. She ain't nervous. You sure? I've watched that little girl race since she was 12 years old. That's not nerves. What is it? Pride. Letitia smiled. You're probably right. Across the stadium, another section of the stands erupted. Lia Robinson jumped to her feet. Come on, sis. People around her laughed as she waved a homemade sign that read, Colombia's fastest. Vanessa looked toward the crowd. The moment she spotted Lia, she couldn't help but smile. Lia cupped her hands around her mouth. You better bring that gold home. Vanessa pointed toward her best friend before laughing. The starter called the athletes forward. Ladies. The stadium slowly became quiet. On your marks. 6 women stepped behind their starting blocks. Vanessa lowered herself into position. She pressed both hands against the track. Her heartbeat echoed inside her ears. Everything disappeared. The crowd. The cameras. The pressure. There was only the lane in front of her. Set. Every runner lifted into position. Silence. The gun exploded. The athletes burst from the blocks. Vanessa's start wasn't perfect. She knew it immediately. Drive. Her spikes bit into the track. Stay low. Step, step, step. By the time they reached the curve, she had already erased the slow start. Lance nodded. There she goes. Letitia squeezed his arm. I told you. Vanessa was flying. Years of endless mornings. Rain. Heat. Pain. Every sacrifice pushed her forward. She entered the final bend. She was beginning to pull away. Then, everything changed. The runner in lane 5 lost her footing. Her right foot landed across the line. Vanessa had nowhere to go. Their legs collided. The sound wasn't loud, but it was enough. Vanessa's body twisted violently. She hit the track shoulder first. Her knee buckled underneath her. A scream pierced the stadium. The crowd gasped. The race continued. No one celebrated. Medical staff sprinted across the track. Vanessa grabbed her leg. Tears instantly filled her eyes. No. She tried to move. The pain exploded through her knee. No. Lance was already running. Vanessa. Officials stopped him at the fence. Sir. You can't come onto the track. My athlete is hurt. We've got her. Vanessa's breathing became frantic. My leg. One of the trainers knelt beside her. Don't move. I can't feel. It's okay. No. She looked toward the finish line. The race was over. Her race. Her season. Maybe even her dream. The tears rolled down both cheeks. No. The trainer gently placed a hand on her shoulder. We're going to take care of you. The camera zoomed in as Vanessa covered her face. Across America, millions watched one of the fastest women in college athletics lying on the track. The screen slowly faded to black. For several seconds, there was only silence. The sounds of children playing echoed through a neighborhood park. A much younger Vanessa ran barefoot around a faded oval track, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't racing anyone. She was running away from something she couldn't yet explain. And that was where her story truly began. The summer heat settled over Columbia, South Carolina, like a heavy blanket. Cicadas sang from the pine trees surrounding Carver Community Park as children laughed on the basketball court nearby. Families grilled beneath the picnic shelters, and teenagers filled the swings and walking paths. 8-year-old Vanessa Jones didn't notice any of it. She just kept running. Her tiny feet pounded against the cracked asphalt track one lap after another. Sweat dripped down her face as tears blurred her vision. She wasn't racing another child. She was racing the hurt inside her heart. Only an hour earlier, she had been sitting on the living room floor doing homework while her mother, Ashley, paced the kitchen with a cordless phone pressed against her ear. "I don't care what you say," Ashley shouted. "You ain't taking my daughter nowhere." Vanessa froze. She knew who her mother was talking about. Her daddy. Ashley slammed the phone onto the counter. "You hear me?" She yelled toward the empty room as if Deshawn could still hear her. "You'll never see her again." Vanessa slowly stood. "Mom." Ashley turned. "What? Was Daddy coming to get me today?" Ashley laughed, but there wasn't an ounce of happiness in it. "For what?" He said he wanted to take me to the zoo." Ashley rolled her eyes. "He ain't coming." Vanessa looked toward the window. "But." He called and canceled. Vanessa lowered her head. "Oh." Ashley crossed her arms. "You know why?" Vanessa shook her head. "Because he doesn't love you enough to be here." The words hit harder than Ashley realized. Vanessa stood there for several seconds before quietly walking to her bedroom. She closed the door. She didn't cry. Not yet. She simply put on her old sneakers and walked to the neighborhood park. Now she ran. One lap. Then another. Then another. Every time she thought about what her mother said, she ran faster. Every time she heard Ashley's words, she pumped her arms harder. "He doesn't love you." "No," she whispered between breaths. "He left us." "No." "He has another family now." "No." She kept running until her legs burned. Finally she slowed to a walk. She bent over, hands resting on her knees, trying to catch her breath, tears still filling her eyes. "You know." A calm voice interrupted the silence. Calm. Most kids quit after 2 laps. Vanessa looked up. Standing beside the fence was a man in a gray t-shirt, athletic shorts, and a whistle hanging around his neck. He smiled. "I counted 12. Vanessa wiped her eyes quickly. "I wasn't crying." The man chuckled. "I didn't say you were." She stood up. "You counting?" "I was." "Why?" "Because you're fast." Vanessa shrugged. "I guess." "No." He smiled. "I know." He walked toward her slowly, making sure not to frighten her. "My name's Lance." She looked at him cautiously. "I'm Vanessa. It's nice to meet you." She nodded. "You run every day?" "Sometimes." "Who taught you?" "No one." "You just run." She nodded again. "When I get mad." Lance looked around the empty track. "Mind if I ask what you're mad about?" Vanessa hesitated. "My mom." "What happened?" "Nothing." He could tell there was much more to the story. He didn't push. Instead he smiled. "You hungry?" Vanessa looked surprised. "No, sir." "You sure?" She nodded. "My mom doesn't like me taking stuff from people." "Fair enough." He reached into his bag anyway. "How about a bottle of water?" She looked at it, then at him. Then slowly accepted it. "Thank you." "You're welcome." She drank half the bottle without stopping. "You coach?" She finally asked, noticing the whistle. "I do." "What sport?" "Track." She looked around the empty oval. "Like this?" "Exactly like this." "You got kids?" "I coach a whole bunch of them." "You make them run this much?" Lance laughed. "Sometimes more." Vanessa's eyes grew wide. "They don't quit." "Sometimes." "I wouldn't." "I know." He pointed toward the starting line. "Want to see something?" She nodded. He crouched beside one of the faded lane markers. "This is called the start." He showed her how to place her feet. How to keep her hips low. How to drive forward instead of standing up too soon. "Now you try." Vanessa copied him. "Good. Like this." "Almost." He gently adjusted her stance. "There." She looked up. "Ready?" He smiled. "When I clap." He clapped once. Vanessa exploded forward. Lance watched her take off. His eyebrows lifted. She wasn't polished. She wasn't technically sound. But she was naturally explosive. When she reached the curve, she slowed and jogged back. "How was that?" Lance couldn't help smiling. "Pretty good." "Really? I think you could be special." Her smile disappeared almost instantly. My mama says I'm not. Lance's heart sank. She says I waste my time. He knelt until they were eye level. Vanessa. Yes, sir. Never let somebody else decide what you're capable of. She stared at him. I don't even know you. I know. So why you saying all this? Because sometimes. He smiled warmly. God lets strangers see things in us before we see them ourselves. Vanessa looked down at her shoes. I'd like to run for your team. I'd like that too. She sighed. But my mama ain't gonna let me. Lance stood. Maybe she'll surprise you. Vanessa shook her head. No, she won't. 2 days later, Lance knocked on the door of the Jones home. Ashley answered with a cigarette in one hand and obvious irritation on her face. Can I help you? Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Lance Williams. So, I coach the Columbia Lightning AAU track team. Ashley looked confused. Anne. I met your daughter at the park. Her expression immediately changed. What'd she do? Nothing. Then why you here? I think she has incredible talent. Ashley laughed so loudly that neighbors sitting on the porch next door glanced over. You serious? Very. I'd love for her to join our program. Ashley shook her head. You wasting your time. I don't think so. I do. Lance remained polite. Ma'am, I really believe she. Ashley cut him off. That little girl ain't special. Lance remained silent. She'd just mess your team up. He looked toward the hallway where Vanessa quietly peeked around the corner. Their eyes met for just a second. You ought to go find another kid worth your time, Ashley continued. 'Cause mine ain't it. Vanessa slowly disappeared back into the hallway. Lance took a slow breath. I appreciate your time. Ashley started closing the door. Good luck, coach. The door slammed shut. Lance stood on the porch for several seconds. Most people would have walked away. He couldn't. As he drove home, he couldn't stop thinking about the little girl running alone around that park. Some children needed coaching. Others needed someone to believe in them. Vanessa Jones needed both. That evening, he looked over at his wife, Letitia, as they sat at the dinner table. I met a little girl today. Letitia smiled. You say that every season. No. He shook his head. This one's different. She put her fork down. What makes her different? Lance leaned back in his chair. I think I just met the fastest little girl in Columbia. Letitia grinned. So why don't she run for you? He looked down quietly. Because nobody at home believes she can. Letitia reached across the table and gently squeezed his hand. Then maybe. God sent you to change that. For the next several weeks, Coach Lance made it part of his daily routine to stop by Carver Community Park after work. Some days Vanessa was already there. Some days she wasn't. But on the days she was always running. Not because someone told her to. Not because she had a race. Because running had become the only place where the pain couldn't catch her. One afternoon, she spotted Lance walking toward the track carrying a small duffel bag. She smiled. I knew you'd come back. Vanessa said. Lance laughed. What makes you so sure? 'Cause you ain't quit on me. He stopped for a second. That simple sentence hit him harder than she realized. Well, he said with a grin, I guess we better get to work. Over the next hour, Lance taught Vanessa the fundamentals of sprinting. Your arms. Vanessa stopped. What about them? They're crossing your body. I didn't know. That's why I'm here. He gently demonstrated. Keep them moving straight. Like pistons. She copied him. Better. Much. He nodded toward the starting line. Now let's work on your first 10 steps. She frowned. I thought I was supposed to run fast. You are. But speed starts before you ever stand up. He showed her how to explode out of an imaginary set of starting blocks. Stay low. She tried. No. She laughed. I looked funny, didn't I? You looked like somebody trying to jump over a puddle. She laughed even harder. Again. She did. Better. Again. 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 By the end of the afternoon, Vanessa collapsed onto the grass. I can't move. Lance handed her another bottle of water. You'll thank me one day. I don't think so. He smiled. You will. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Even though Ashley refused to let Vanessa join the AAU team, she couldn't stop Lance from meeting her at the park. He never crossed the line. He never disrespected Ashley. He simply coached the little girl who kept showing up. Sometimes they worked on starts. Sometimes they worked on acceleration. Sometimes they just talked. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, Vanessa asked the question she'd been holding inside. Coach. Yeah. You got kids? I do. A boy. He smiled. A daughter. How old? About your age. Vanessa nodded quietly. Does she think you're cool? Lance laughed. Depends on the day. Vanessa giggled. I bet she listens. Sometimes. She stared down at the track. I wish my mama came to watch me run. Lance didn't answer right away. What would you want her to say? Vanessa's voice became almost a whisper. Good job. Silence settled between them. I don't need a trophy. She kicked a small rock across the lane. I just wish, one time. She swallowed hard. She'd be proud of me. Lance looked toward the fading sunset. I already am. Vanessa looked at him. You are. I've never met a kid who works harder than you. A small smile crossed her face. Really? Really? She stared back down at the track, blinking away tears. No one has ever told me that before. Life at home didn't change. If anything, it became harder. Ashley worked long hours while trying to finish college. The stress followed her home every evening. Vanessa tried to stay out of the way. She washed dishes, folded clothes, helped clean. But somehow, it never seemed to be enough. One Saturday afternoon, Ashley walked into the living room carrying laundry. Vanessa. Yes, ma'am. Where your brother? I don't know. Evelyn. She left with her friends. Ashley sighed loudly. Figures. She dropped the laundry basket onto the couch. I need these clothes folded before I get back. Okay. And don't disappear down to that park. Vanessa hesitated. But Coach said. Ashley spun around. I don't care what Coach said. Vanessa lowered her eyes. Yes, ma'am. Ashley grabbed her purse. And quit thinking running gonna change your life. The front door slammed. Vanessa sat quietly on the couch. She stared at the laundry. Then toward the window. She could see the park from the end of the street. She folded every shirt. Every towel. Every pair of jeans. By the time Ashley returned, everything was neatly stacked. Ashley glanced at the piles. About time. No thank you. No smile. No acknowledgement. Vanessa simply nodded. Can I go outside now? Ashley waved her hand. I don't care. Vanessa grabbed her shoes and ran all the way to the park. Coach Lance was already there. You okay? She forced a smile. I'm fine. He knew she wasn't. But he also knew she'd talk when she was ready. Come on. He pointed toward the straightaway. Let's race. She laughed. You faster than me. I didn't say I was racing. He blew his whistle. I said let's race. She took off. Lance watched her sprint down the lane. Her stride had gotten longer. Her arms stayed compact. Her head stayed still. She crossed the finish line and turned around, breathing hard. How'd I do? Lance smiled proudly. You know. What? I was wrong. She looked confused. About what? When I first met you. I told my wife you were the fastest little girl in Columbia. Vanessa grinned. You still think that? He shook his head. No. Her smile faded. You aren't the fastest little girl anymore. She looked disappointed. I think. He paused just long enough to make her nervous. You're becoming one of the fastest young sprinters I've ever coached. Her eyes grew wide. You mean that? I don't hand out compliments. She couldn't stop smiling. Coach. Yeah. I'm gonna make you proud one day. Lance folded his arms. You already have. That evening, when Lance got home, Letitia met him in the kitchen. How's your superstar? He smiled. She's growing. You still worried about her? He nodded. Every day. Letitia poured him a cup of coffee. Because of her mother. He sighed. I can teach her how to sprint. He stared out the kitchen window. I can teach her how to finish races. He took a sip. But I can't teach a child how to survive not being loved at home. Letitia walked over and wrapped an arm around him. Maybe. She smiled gently. That's not your job. He looked at her. Maybe your job is just to keep reminding her she's worth loving. Lance smiled softly. I hope that's enough. Letitia squeezed his hand. For a little girl like Vanessa. She looked toward the evening sky. Sometimes one person believing in you is enough to change your whole life. The first day of high school felt like the start of a race Vanessa had been preparing for her entire life. Students filled the hallways carrying backpacks, laughing with friends they hadn't seen all summer. Lockers slammed shut as teachers directed students to their classrooms. Vanessa stood quietly by herself. She adjusted the straps of her worn backpack and looked down at the schedule in her hand. Fresh start, she whispered. She wanted high school to be different. She wanted to belong somewhere. More than anything, she wanted to run. That afternoon, Coach Lance was waiting near the track after school. So, he smiled. You gonna do it? Vanessa nodded enthusiastically. I signed up. For what? She laughed. You know. I want to hear you say it. She smiled wider than he had ever seen. I made the track team. Lance threw both hands in the air. There you go. She laughed. They haven't practiced yet. I don't care. They haven't seen me run. I might not even make varsity. Lance pointed toward her. Listen to me. She grew serious. You've already beaten the hardest opponent you'll ever face. What opponent? The one that lives right here. He gently tapped the side of his own head. Doubt. The excitement didn't last long. Track practice officially began 3 weeks later. Vanessa quickly realized that running around the park and competing in organized track were two completely different things. Coach Daniels, the head sprint coach at the high school, blew his whistle. Again. The runners groaned. Vanessa's legs burned. Her starts were inconsistent. She struggled to stay relaxed. She finished near the back during almost every practice race. The older girls noticed. One afternoon, a senior named Brittany laughed as they walked off the track. I thought you said she was fast. Another girl shrugged. Maybe in her neighborhood. The group laughed. Vanessa heard every word. She pretended she didn't. That evening, she sat on the curb outside the school waiting for Coach Lance. When he pulled into the parking lot, he immediately noticed something was wrong. You lose somebody. She shook her head. They were laughing at me. He nodded. Who? The girls on the team. What did they say? She stared at the ground. They said I'm slow. Lance sat beside her on the curb. You know what I think. What? I think they're right. Vanessa looked up, hurt. You do. Right now. He smiled. You are. She frowned. I thought you believed in me. I do. So why would you say that? Because being slow today doesn't mean you'll be slow tomorrow. She sat quietly. You've never run organized track before. She nodded. They've been doing this for years. I know. So why are you comparing your beginning to their middle? Vanessa looked at him. I never thought about it like that. He stood. Come on. Where we going? Back to work. For the next several months, the park became their classroom. Lance borrowed starting blocks from the AAU team. He painted makeshift lane lines on the old asphalt. Every afternoon, the lessons continued. Drive. Don't pop up. Relax your shoulders. Finish through the line. Again. Sometimes until the sun disappeared behind the trees. At home, nothing changed. If anything, Ashley became more irritated with Vanessa's growing commitment to track. One evening, Vanessa rushed through the front door carrying her practice bag. Mom. Ashley looked up from the television. What? I made the relay team. Ashley shrugged. So? Vanessa's smile faded. We got our first meet next week. Ashley reached for the remote. You still gotta wash those dishes. I will. Before you go anywhere. I know. Vanessa hurried into the kitchen. As she washed the dishes, Evelyn walked in wearing headphones around her neck. She glanced toward Vanessa. So? What? You still doing your little track thing? Vanessa smiled. I like it. Evelyn laughed. You ain't going nowhere with it. Vanessa kept washing. I just want to get better. Todd, everyone called him TJ, walked through the kitchen carrying a basketball. You hear little sis? Evelyn smirked. She gonna be famous. TJ chuckled. Maybe she'll race the school bus. The two burst into laughter. Vanessa stood silently at the sink. She had learned something over the years. Sometimes, silence protected your peace. The first meet finally arrived. Coach Daniels gathered the team before warm-ups. Remember. He looked around at every athlete. This isn't about winning today. It's about competing. Vanessa nodded. She believed him. Until she stepped onto the track. Schools from all over the Midlands filled the stadium. The bleachers were packed with parents. Everywhere she looked. Families cheered. Mothers hugged daughters. Fathers adjusted spikes. Little brothers carried backpacks. Vanessa instinctively searched the stands. Just once. She hoped. Maybe. Her mother had come. She scanned every row. Nothing. Coach Daniels walked over. You looking for somebody? Vanessa forced a smile. No, sir. You ready? She nodded. Yes, sir. Ladies. On your marks. Vanessa settled into the blocks. She remembered every lesson Coach Lance had taught her. Drive. Stay low. Don't rush. The gun sounded. She exploded out. Her start was decent. But halfway through the race, the experienced runners separated themselves. Vanessa fought to keep up. She crossed the finish line in 6th place. Breathing hard. Disappointed. She bent over with her hands on her knees. I blew it. Coach Daniels walked over. You finished. I lost. You competed. I wanted to win. He smiled. So does everybody else. She looked toward the scoreboard. My time was terrible. It was. She looked surprised. But, he continued. It was almost a full second faster than your practice time. She blinked. Really? He nodded. You just set your personal best. She hadn't even realized it. I did. You did. For the first time that afternoon. She smiled. After the meet, she hurried home carrying the results sheet. She burst through the front door. Mom. Ashley didn't even look up from the couch. What? I got a personal best today. Ashley sighed. So, you won. No. Ashley shrugged. Then what you telling me for? Vanessa looked down at the paper. I just thought. Ashley interrupted. I got enough stuff to worry about. Evelyn walked into the room holding a soda. What happened? Ashley answered before Vanessa could. She lost. Evelyn smirked. Told you. TJ laughed from the hallway. There goes our little Olympian. The house filled with laughter. Vanessa stood there for another second. Then quietly folded the results sheet. Without saying another word. She walked to her room. She closed the door. Sat on the edge of her bed. Looked down at the stopwatch Coach Daniels had given every runner. Then she whispered to herself. They don't have to believe. She wiped the tears from her eyes. I do. Outside her bedroom window, the evening breeze gently moved the branches of the old oak tree. Tomorrow. She'd be back on the track. Because somewhere deep inside, despite every cruel word she'd ever heard, the dream was still alive. Freshman year came and went without much attention. Vanessa never won a race. She wasn't the fastest girl on the team. She wasn't the athlete coaches from major universities came to watch. She was simply a girl who refused to quit. The losses hurt. But they didn't break her. If anything, they made her hungrier. The summer before her sophomore year became the hardest training Coach Lance had ever put her through. While most teenagers spent their mornings sleeping late, Vanessa was already on the track before sunrise. The humid South Carolina air wrapped around her like a blanket as she lined up beside the starting blocks. Lance looked at his watch. 5:30. Vanessa yawned. The sun ain't even up. He smiled. Neither are your competitors. She rolled her eyes. You really don't play. Nope. He pointed toward the blocks. Let's go. The workouts became brutal. Flying 30s. Hill sprints. Resistance bands. Explosive starts. Weight training. Form drills. Every mistake was corrected. Every weakness was attacked. Every success was earned. Some mornings Vanessa thought she couldn't take another step. But Coach Lance never asked her to do something he didn't believe she could accomplish. One Saturday, after nearly 3 hours of training, Vanessa collapsed onto the grass. I quit. Lance laughed. You said that last week. I mean it this time. No, you don't. She stared at the clouds. My legs don't even belong to me anymore. Letitia walked across the field carrying a small cooler. I heard somebody talking about quitting. Vanessa smiled. I wasn't serious. I know. Letitia handed her a sandwich. You have to eat. Vanessa looked inside the bag. Turkey. And fruit. I love you, Miss Letitia. Letitia laughed. I know you do. Vanessa smiled. My mama don't even make me lunch. Letitia's smile faded just enough for Lance to notice. She sat beside Vanessa. You know something. What? You don't have to be born into someone's heart. Vanessa looked confused. What do you mean? Letitia gently brushed a strand of hair away from Vanessa's face. Sometimes God places people in your life so they'll love you exactly when you need it. Vanessa leaned over and hugged her. Thank you. Letitia kissed the top of her head. You're welcome, baby. Lance quietly looked away. He pretended to organize the equipment. The truth was, he didn't want Vanessa to see the tears forming in his eyes. Sophomore year started differently. Coach Daniels blew his whistle during the first-time trial. Jones. Vanessa looked up. Yes, coach. Come here. She jogged over. He looked down at his stopwatch. What did you do this summer? She looked confused. Ran. He smiled. I can tell. The other girls glanced toward Vanessa. She was no longer finishing near the back. She was pushing the veterans. Practice after practice. She got stronger. Meet after meet. Her times dropped. The whispers began. She getting fast. I didn't know she could move like that. Who coached her? Even Brittany. The same senior who laughed at her freshman year. Walked over after practice. You been working? Vanessa smiled politely. I'm trying. Brittany nodded. It shows. The improvement finally paid off. Midway through the season, Coach Daniels gathered the sprinters before a regional meet. Jones. Yes, coach. You're running the Open 100. Vanessa's eyes widened. Me. You earned it. Her heart pounded. This was the first varsity race of her career. She immediately called Coach Lance. They finally gave me a shot. He laughed so hard she had to pull the phone away from her ear. I knew it. You knew. I've been waiting on them to catch up. The stadium buzzed with excitement that Saturday afternoon. Coach Lance and Letitia quietly slipped into the stands before the meet began. Vanessa looked around during warm-ups. The moment she saw them, she smiled. Coach Lance simply nodded. No words. He knew she was ready. Ladies. On your marks. Vanessa settled into lane 6. She closed her eyes. Drive. Relax. Finish. The gun cracked. She exploded from the blocks. For the first 30 meters. She stayed low. 40 meters. She began to rise. 60. She was even. 80. She surged. The finish line rushed toward her. She leaned. The race was over. Every runner looked toward the scoreboard. Vanessa couldn't breathe. Coach Daniels stared at the screen. Then, a huge grin spread across his face. He turned toward her. You got her. Vanessa looked up. Lane 6. First place. For a second. She didn't move. She simply stared. Her voice cracked. I won. Coach Daniels laughed. You sure did. Vanessa covered her mouth. Tears instantly filled her eyes. The crowd applauded as medals were presented. She climbed onto the top step for the very first time. Gold hanging around her neck. Coach Lance stood in the stands clapping. Letitia wiped away tears. I told you. Lance smiled proudly. No. He whispered. She told us. Vanessa couldn't wait to get home. She carried the medal in her hand the entire drive. She imagined showing Ashley. Maybe this time. Things would be different. She opened the front door. Mom. Ashley looked up from the kitchen. What? I won. Ashley continued stirring the pot. What did you win? My race. So. Vanessa held up the medal. I got first place. Ashley barely glanced at it. You finish celebrating. Vanessa's smile slowly disappeared. I guess. Ashley pointed toward the sink. Good. Get those dishes washed before they start smelling. Vanessa stood frozen. The medal still hanging from her fingers. She looked toward Evelyn. Her sister shrugged. One race don't make you a champion. TJ laughed from the living room. Don't let it go to your head, Speedy. Vanessa quietly lowered the medal. Without saying a word. She walked into the kitchen. As she stood at the sink washing dishes, the medal rested on the counter beside her. Soap bubbles floated across the gold surface. For a brief moment, it looked as though the medal itself was crying. Later that evening, there was a knock at the front door. Ashley answered. Coach Lance stood on the porch holding a small cake. Across the top, written in blue icing, were the words, "Congratulations, champ." Ashley looked at the cake. "What is this?" Lance smiled. "Vanessa won her first varsity race today." Ashley shrugged. "Okay. I thought she'd like to celebrate." Ashley stepped aside. "Vanessa." She called toward the kitchen without enthusiasm. "Your coach here." Vanessa walked into the living room. The moment she saw the cake, her eyes filled with tears. Coach Lance held it out. "You only win your first race once." She couldn't speak. Letitia stepped from behind him carrying balloons. "We weren't about to let today pass without celebrating." Vanessa hugged them both. Ashley stood off to the side with her arms folded. Watching. Not smiling. Not congratulating. Just watching. As Lance lit a single candle on top of the cake, he looked at Vanessa and said quietly, "Make a wish." Vanessa closed her eyes. She didn't wish for faster times. She didn't wish for more medals. She didn't even wish for Olympic dreams. Her only wish was that one day she would know what it felt like to come home and already be enough. Sophomore year ended with more victories than losses. Vanessa had become one of the fastest sprinters in the Midlands. College coaches had finally started paying attention. The letters arrived one at a time. Then they came in bundles. South Carolina, Clemson, North Carolina A&T, Coastal Carolina, East Carolina, Charleston Southern. Each envelope represented another opportunity, another door opening, another reminder that somebody believed she belonged somewhere. Ashley barely looked at them. One afternoon Vanessa spread the letters across the kitchen table while she filled out homework. Ashley walked in carrying grocery bags. "What is all that?" Vanessa smiled. "Recruiting letters." Ashley unloaded the bags without looking up. "They send those to everybody." Vanessa's smile faded. "No," Coach Daniels said. Ashley interrupted. "Coach Daniels ain't paying your bills." Vanessa quietly gathered the letters back into a stack. Coach Lance had a different opinion. A week later he sat across from Vanessa in the bleachers after practice. "So?" He smiled. "How many schools now?" Vanessa opened her backpack. "I stopped counting." He laughed. "That's a good problem to have." She handed him a letter with the Gamecock logo across the top. "They invited me to visit." Lance looked at the letter and smiled. "The University of South Carolina." Vanessa nodded. "I've dreamed about this." "You earned it." She looked out across the empty track. "You think I'm good enough?" Lance looked almost offended. "Vanessa." "Yes, sir. Don't ever ask me that again." She looked surprised. "You are not chasing these schools." He pointed to the stack of letters. "They're chasing you." By the start of her junior year, everything clicked. The awkward freshman. The improving sophomore. She was gone. Vanessa had become a leader. The younger girls watched how she warmed up. They copied her stretches. Asked questions. One freshman nervously approached her after practice. "Excuse me." Vanessa smiled. "Yeah. I get nervous before races." Vanessa laughed softly. "So do I." The girl looked shocked. "You do?" "Every single time." "I thought champions don't get scared." Vanessa smiled. "Champions get scared." She tapped the girl's chest gently. "They just don't let fear decide how they finish." That season became unforgettable. Meet after meet. Vanessa kept winning. The local newspaper ran a headline. "Columbia sprinter making her mark." Another article called her the fastest girl in the state. For the first time, people recognized her in public. One afternoon while walking through a grocery store, an elderly man stopped her. "You Vanessa Jones?" She smiled politely. "Yes, sir. I saw you run on television." "Thank you." He shook her hand. "You made Columbia proud." As he walked away, Vanessa smiled to herself. Those 4 words stayed with her all day. You made Columbia proud. She wondered, what would it feel like if her own mother ever said them? At home, life remained exactly the same. Ashley had started drinking more. Most evenings she sat in the living room with a bottle beside her. The television stayed on. The conversations became shorter. The criticism became louder. One Friday night Vanessa walked through the front door carrying another medal. Ashley looked up. "You win again." Vanessa nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Ashley shrugged. "That's nice." Then she reached for her drink. Don't forget to take the trash out. Evelyn's life had taken a very different path. She had dropped out of college during her freshman year after becoming pregnant. Less than a year after her first child was born, she had another baby. Now she was 23 years old, living back at Ashley's house with 2 toddlers. The children's father had recently been sentenced to 5 years in prison for credit card fraud. Stress followed Evelyn everywhere she went. One evening Vanessa came home from practice exhausted. The smell of macaroni filled the house. She had barely put her backpack down before Evelyn called from the living room. Nessa. Yeah. I'm going out. Vanessa looked confused. Okay. I need you to watch the kids. She glanced at the clock. I've got homework. So. I got practice in the morning. So. Evelyn. Her sister's face hardened. You think you too good to watch your niece and nephew? No. Then watch them. Vanessa looked toward Ashley. Mom. Ashley never took her eyes off the television. You heard your sister. Vanessa sighed quietly. Yes, ma'am. Hours passed. The children finally fell asleep. It was nearly midnight before Evelyn stumbled back into the house laughing with her friends. Vanessa was asleep on the couch. Her biology book rested open on her chest. Evelyn nudged her shoulder. I'm back. Vanessa rubbed her eyes. What time is it? Late. Vanessa stood slowly. I've got conditioning at 6. Evelyn laughed. You act like you training for the Olympics. Vanessa didn't answer. She simply picked up her backpack and walked to her room. Behind her, she could hear Evelyn laughing with her friends. There go my little sister. Evelyn said loudly enough for Vanessa to hear. Doing her little track thing. The room erupted in laughter. Vanessa quietly closed her bedroom door. She sat on the edge of the bed. For just a moment, she allowed herself to cry. Not because of what they said, but because she kept hoping. Maybe this time, they would be proud of her. The next morning, Coach Lance noticed immediately. You didn't sleep. Vanessa forced a smile. I'm okay. He crossed his arms. You know lying is a bad habit. She laughed weakly. Evelyn went out. Anne. I had the kids. What time she get home? About midnight. Lance nodded slowly. You still came. I wasn't missing practice. He smiled proudly. There she is. She looked confused. Who? The young lady I know. He handed her a relay baton. Life gonna keep putting weight on your shoulders. She looked at the baton. You know what runners do. What? They keep moving. He tapped the baton gently. And when it gets too heavy. He smiled. They pass it to somebody they trust. Vanessa looked at him thoughtfully. I don't have many people I trust. Lance pointed toward himself. Start with me. Then he pointed toward the parking lot where Letitia was unloading breakfast sandwiches from her SUV. And her. Vanessa turned as Letitia waved. Morning, baby. Vanessa couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a long time, she realized something. Maybe family wasn't always the people who lived under the same roof. Maybe family was the people who kept showing up. Junior year arrived with expectations Vanessa had never experienced before. She wasn't the unknown runner anymore. She wasn't the girl trying to make the relay team. She was now the runner every school circled on the schedule. Every newspaper listed her name. Every coach had a strategy to beat her. Every race became a target. Coach Daniels gathered the team before the season opener. Ladies. The locker room became quiet. Everybody in this room has pressure. He looked toward Vanessa. But some people carry more than others. Vanessa lowered her eyes. You've earned that pressure. He smiled. Now embrace it. The season couldn't have started any better. Vanessa won the season opener. Then another. Then another. The victories came so often that reporters stopped asking if she could win. They started asking how much she would win by. Coach Lance made sure she never became comfortable. After every race, he found something to correct. You lifted your head. You chopped your stride. You leaned too early. One afternoon Vanessa finally laughed. You know what? I won by almost 3/10. I know. You still ain't happy. I'll be happy. He smiled. When you run the perfect race. She laughed. Does that even exist? Lance looked across the empty track. No. Then why chase it? Because chasing perfection creates excellence. The regional championships arrived. The stadium overflowed with spectators. College coaches lined the fence taking notes. Vanessa looked into the stands. This time, she wasn't looking for Ashley. She already knew she wasn't coming. Instead, she smiled when she saw Coach Lance and Letitia sitting beside each other. Letitia stood and waved. "We love you." Vanessa pointed toward them and smiled. Then she noticed someone else. Lia Robinson. She stood 2 rows behind them wearing a University of South Carolina volleyball hoodie. She held up a sign. "Run, sis." Vanessa laughed. Coach Lance looked back at Lia. "You made that." Lia smiled proudly. "Took me 2 hours. It looks like a 5-year-old made it." She gasped dramatically. "Coach." Letitia burst into laughter. "Leave that girl alone." Lia folded her arms. "Y'all lucky I love y'all." Coach Lance laughed. "We love you too." The gun fired. Vanessa exploded from the blocks. Everything Coach Lance had taught her came together. Power. Rhythm. Patience. She crossed the finish line nearly 2 strides ahead of everyone else. The stadium erupted. Coach Daniels threw both fists into the air. "That's what I'm talking about." Vanessa looked toward the stands. Coach Lance simply nodded. That meant more to her than any celebration. After the medal ceremony, Lia ran down the stairs and nearly tackled Vanessa. "You did it." Vanessa laughed. "I almost didn't see you. I skipped volleyball workouts." "You did what?" "I told Coach I had family business." Vanessa smiled. "You ain't my family." Lia stopped walking. She looked directly into Vanessa's eyes. "You better stop saying that." Vanessa looked confused. "You've been my sister since the first day we met." Vanessa smiled. "You serious?" "As a heart attack." Lia wrapped an arm around Vanessa's shoulders. "You don't get to pick who you're born to." She squeezed her tightly. "But you absolutely get to choose who you call family." Vanessa leaned her head against Lia's shoulder. "I needed to hear that." "I know." Several weeks later, the University of South Carolina hosted its annual recruiting weekend. Athletes from all over the Southeast visited campus. Vanessa stepped onto the track wearing a visitor's pass around her neck. She stopped in the middle of the infield. Everything felt bigger. The stadium. The facilities. The training center. She whispered to herself. One day, Coach Reynolds, the head sprint coach, walked over smiling. "You must be Vanessa Jones." "Yes, sir. We've been waiting to meet you." She shook his hand. "It's nice to meet you. I've watched every race you've run this season." Vanessa looked surprised. "You have?" He nodded. "I like your speed." She smiled. "Thank you. But what impresses me more?" He paused. Is your work ethic." She looked confused. "Coach Lance talks about you all the time." Vanessa laughed. "He does. He said if I wanted to recruit an athlete with character." Coach Reynolds smiled. I needed to recruit Vanessa Jones." That evening, Coach Lance drove Vanessa home. She held the scholarship folder tightly in her lap. "They're offering me half." Lance smiled. "I know. You already knew. They called me." She stared out the window. "I never thought this would happen." He glanced toward her. "I did. You really believed in me all these years." He smiled softly. "Vanessa." She looked over. "I never believed in the runner." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I believed in the little girl." He paused. Who kept showing up. Tears welled in her eyes. "You remember that?" "I remember every afternoon at that park." He chuckled. "You used to run barefoot." She laughed through her tears. "I did. You had holes in your shoes." "I know. You didn't have starting blocks." "No. You didn't have a track." "No. You just had a dream." Vanessa quietly looked down at the scholarship packet. "And somebody who wouldn't let me quit." Lance smiled. "You did all the hard work." She shook her head. "No." She looked at him with tears rolling down her cheeks. You saw me before anybody else did." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Lance simply reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "You know what? I'm proud of the athlete." Vanessa smiled. "But I'm even prouder of the woman you're becoming." When they pulled into Ashley's driveway, Vanessa sat in the car for another moment. Lance looked over. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "I just wish." She couldn't finish the sentence. "I know." He already knew what she wanted. She wanted to walk into that house, hold up her scholarship offer, and hear her mother say, "I'm proud of you." Lance wished he could promise that day would come, but he couldn't. Instead he smiled and said the only thing he knew was true, whether she ever says it or not. He looked Vanessa in the eyes. "I'm proud of you." Vanessa wiped away another tear. "Thank you, Coach." She stepped out of the truck holding the scholarship folder against her chest. As she walked toward the front door, she took one deep breath. She still hoped. Maybe, just maybe, tonight would be different. Vanessa stood outside the front door for several seconds. The scholarship packet suddenly felt heavier than it had in the car. She wasn't nervous about the University of South Carolina. She wasn't nervous about college. She wasn't nervous about the future. She was nervous about walking into her own home. She took a deep breath. Maybe today will be different. She opened the door. The television blared from the living room. Ashley sat on the couch with a drink in one hand. Evelyn's two children chased each other through the hallway. TJ sat in the recliner with a video game controller in his hands. No one noticed Vanessa come in. "Hey," she said quietly. Ashley glanced over. "You finally made it home." Vanessa smiled. "I got something I want to show everybody." TJ never looked away from the television. "Hold on." His fingers continued pressing buttons. "I'm in the middle of something." Vanessa laughed awkwardly. "It'll only take a minute." Ashley sighed loudly. "What is it?" Vanessa slowly opened the folder. The garnet and black University of South Carolina logo covered the front page. Ashley glanced at it. "What about it?" Vanessa couldn't hold back her smile. "They offered me a scholarship." Silence. For a brief second, Vanessa thought maybe they were surprised. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Finally Ashley shrugged. "So?" Vanessa blinked. "So? It's South Carolina." Ashley took another sip from her glass. "You still gotta pay the other half." Vanessa's smile weakened. "I know. But Coach said if I keep improving." Ashley interrupted. "Coach ain't paying tuition." Vanessa looked toward TJ. "What do you think?" He paused the game. "You gonna be on TV?" She laughed. "I don't know." He shrugged. "Cool." He picked up the controller again. The game resumed. Vanessa turned toward Evelyn. Her older sister folded baby clothes while one of the children tugged at her leg. "Evelyn." "What?" "I got a scholarship." Evelyn looked up for exactly 1 second. "Half." Vanessa nodded. "That's all." Her smile disappeared. "It's still a scholarship." Evelyn shrugged. "I mean." She folded another shirt. It's better than nothing." The room became quiet again. Vanessa slowly closed the folder. The excitement she had carried all afternoon slowly slipped away. Ashley stood. "I'm going to bed." She walked past Vanessa without another word. As she disappeared down the hallway she called over her shoulder. "Don't forget to lock the door." That was it. No congratulations. No hug. No pride. Just lock the door. Vanessa stood in the kitchen staring at the scholarship packet. She whispered to herself. "I guess that's enough." She wasn't talking about the scholarship. She was talking about hope. She had finally run out of it. The next morning she met Coach Lance at the park before sunrise. He could tell immediately. They didn't say anything. It wasn't a question. Vanessa shook her head. "They said." She swallowed. Half ain't full." Lance looked away for a moment. Then he smiled. "You know what?" "What?" "I think they're right." She looked surprised. "They are." He nodded. "Half isn't full." She frowned. "So why you smiling?" "Because." He pulled a whistle from around his neck. You ain't finished yet." From that day forward, something changed inside Vanessa. She stopped running. To prove people wrong. She started running. To prove herself right. The pressure disappeared. The frustration disappeared. Even the anger she carried toward Ashley slowly faded. She focused on one thing. Getting better. Coach Lance increased the workouts again. Some mornings they trained before school. Some evenings they stayed until darkness covered the track. Letitia often showed up carrying dinner. "Y'all gonna work this child to death?" Lance smiled. "Nah." Vanessa laughed. "They trying to make me famous." Letitia handed Vanessa a plate. "I don't care about famous." She gently touched Vanessa's cheek. I care about healthy. By spring, the improvement was impossible to ignore. Vanessa won the regional championship, then the state championship. Television stations requested interviews. Newspapers wanted pictures. One Saturday morning, a reporter from the local news station met Vanessa after practice. So, the reporter smiled. Everybody wants to know your secret. Vanessa looked toward Coach Lance. He shook his head. She smiled. My secret. The reporter nodded. Yeah. Vanessa thought for a second. My coach taught me something a long time ago. What was that? She smiled. He said. She looked directly into the camera. Don't let somebody else decide what you're capable of. Coach Lance quietly looked away. Letitia squeezed his hand. That's your line. He smiled proudly. No. He whispered. It's hers now. Graduation arrived on a warm May evening. The football stadium overflowed with proud families. Parents held flowers. Grandparents wiped away tears. Students laughed while taking pictures in their caps and gowns. Vanessa sat quietly in her seat. She scanned the crowd. Coach Lance. Letitia. They waved. She smiled. Then she looked farther across the stadium. Ashley was there. TJ was there. Evelyn was there with the children. Vanessa smiled to herself. Maybe. When the ceremony ended, graduates rushed toward their families. Hugs. Laughter. Pictures. Vanessa walked toward Ashley holding her diploma. Mom. Ashley nodded. You graduated. Vanessa smiled. I did. Ashley reached into her purse. She handed Vanessa a card. Here. Vanessa looked surprised. You got me something. Ashley shrugged. Open it later. It wasn't much. Just a simple congratulations card. No long message. No heartfelt letter. No apology. Just. Congratulations on your graduation. Signed. Mom. For most people, it wouldn't have meant much. For Vanessa, it was the first card her mother had ever given her. She smiled. Thank you. Ashley nodded awkwardly. Don't make me regret it. She turned and walked away. Coach Lance had watched the whole exchange. Letitia looked disappointed. That's all she could say. Lance gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Maybe. He looked toward Ashley. That's all she knows how to give. Letitia sighed. I just wish Vanessa had the mother she deserves. Lance watched Vanessa laughing with classmates while holding her diploma. So do I. He smiled. But she also has something a lot of people spend their whole lives looking for. What? A purpose. 3 weeks later, Vanessa officially signed her national letter of intent to attend the University of South Carolina on a track scholarship. The school library was filled with cameras. Teachers. Classmates. Friends. Coach Daniel sat beside Coach Lance. Letitia dabbed at tears with a tissue. When Vanessa signed her name, the room erupted in applause. Flashbulbs lit up the room. Coach Lance stood and hugged her tightly. I told you. Vanessa smiled through tears. You sure did. He looked at her proudly. No. He corrected himself. You told yourself. She laughed. I guess I finally started listening. Coach Lance smiled. And one day, he looked at the young woman standing before him. The whole world will too. The University of South Carolina wasn't just a new school. It was a new beginning. The moment Vanessa stepped onto campus, she felt something she had never experienced before. Freedom. No one knew the little girl who had been told she would never amount to anything. No one knew about the nights she cried herself to sleep. No one knew about the empty seat her mother left at every track meet. Here. She was simply another freshman trying to earn her place. Move-in day filled the campus with excitement. Parents carried boxes. Students laughed. Music echoed through the residence halls. Coach Lance and Letitia helped Vanessa and Laya unload their belongings. You packed your whole bedroom. Lance joked as he struggled with a large storage container. Vanessa laughed. No. She smiled. Just the important stuff. Letitia opened one of the boxes. You brought trophies. Vanessa nodded. They remind me where I came from. Letitia smiled. And where you're going. Laya laughed as she started making her bed. Can't believe we're in college. The two girls burst into laughter as Letitia helped Laya make her bed up. Laya also received a scholarship to the university to play volleyball. Vanessa smiled. The four of them spent nearly 2 hours at a small restaurant just off campus. Conversation flowed effortlessly. Laya was so happy that they were roommates. Vanessa said she couldn't wait to get on the yard. Letitia laughed harder than anyone at the table. By the time lunch ended, Laya looked at Vanessa. I think we're gonna have fun in college. Vanessa smiled. I think so too. Coach Lance quietly looked at Letitia. I think they're gonna be okay. College practices were unlike anything Vanessa had ever experienced. Everything moved faster. The workouts were longer. The athletes were stronger. Every woman on the team had been the best runner at her high school. Now, they were all fighting for the same lanes. Coach Reynolds gathered the sprinters together. Nobody cares what you did in high school. The team became silent. You all start over today. Vanessa nodded. She liked that. She had spent her entire life proving herself. She didn't mind doing it one more time. The first month was humbling. She didn't dominate. She didn't win every workout. Some days, she finished near the back. After one particularly difficult practice, she sat alone in the empty bleachers. Laya climbed the stairs carrying 2 sports drinks. I figured I'd find you here. Vanessa accepted the bottle. Thanks. You look miserable. I got smoked today. Laya laughed. So, I've never been this far behind. Laya shrugged. My first volleyball scrimmage. She smiled. I got blocked 7 straight times. Vanessa laughed. You serious? Dead serious. What happened? I don't know, but I just always think about Dad and how he'd be like, try harder. She bumped Vanessa's shoulder. Trust me, I know the feeling. Vanessa acknowledged, laughing. The weeks turned into months. Slowly, the hard work paid off. Vanessa earned a spot in the relay. Then she earned a lane in the 100. Then the 200. Every improvement made Coach Reynolds smile. One afternoon he stopped her after practice. Jones. Yes, Coach. You remind me of somebody. She smiled. Who? Myself. She laughed. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's good. He folded his arms. You've got something speed can't teach. What's that? You don't know how to quit. Life off the track became just as rewarding. Vanessa and Laya became inseparable. They studied together, cooked together, trained together, prayed together. Students around campus stopped referring to them by their individual names. Instead they simply said, "Here come the sisters." One Friday evening they decided to film a silly dance for social media. Laya balanced her phone on a stack of books. You ready? Vanessa laughed. I cannot believe you talked me into this. Oh hush. The music started. The girls danced. Missed the beat. Started laughing halfway through. They never finished the routine because they couldn't stop laughing. Laya collapsed onto the bed. We are terrible. Vanessa laughed so hard tears rolled down her face. We are not posting that. Oh yes we are. Just as Laya reached for her phone, a notification appeared on Vanessa's phone. Instagram. Message request. Unknown sender. Laya frowned. Who's that? Spam. Vanessa shrugged. I don't know. She opened the request. The message was only one sentence. Is this Vanessa? This is your Aunt Tasha. Your father has been looking for you. The laughter disappeared from the room. Vanessa stared at the screen. Her breathing slowed. Laya. Her voice barely escaped. I don't have an Aunt Tasha. Laya sat up. Let me see. Vanessa handed her the phone with trembling hands. Laya read the message twice. Then looked at Vanessa. Do you think it's real? Vanessa slowly shook her head. My dad. She swallowed hard. My mom said he left. Laya didn't answer immediately. Instead, she tapped on the sender's profile. Let's find out. The profile opened. Family pictures. Holiday dinners. Birthdays. Graduations. Nothing looked fake. Then, one picture caught Laya's attention. A woman stood beside a man wearing an army dress uniform. The caption read, "Congratulations to my brother on his promotion to Master Sergeant. Love you always." Vanessa slowly zoomed in on the picture. Her heart started racing. The name tape wasn't perfectly clear, but she could almost make it out. Roberts. Laya whispered. I think. She looked back at Vanessa. We just found your father. Vanessa couldn't take her eyes off the screen. For the first time in her life, the possibility existed that everything she had been told might not be true. Vanessa couldn't breathe. Her eyes remained fixed on the photograph. The man stood proudly in his army dress uniform. His arm rested around the woman who had sent the message. On the other side stood another woman with a young boy who looked to be around 10 or 11 years old. The smile on the soldier's face looked familiar. Not because she remembered it. Because she saw pieces of it every morning when she looked in the mirror. His eyes. His smile. The shape of his jaw. She whispered. He looks like me. Laya looked over at her. I was just about to say the same thing. Vanessa slowly sat down on the edge of the bed. My whole life. She shook her head. My mother told me he didn't want me. Neither of them spoke. Laya continued scrolling through the profile. There are pictures going back years. Vanessa wiped a tear from her cheek. What do they say? Laya stopped on another post. This one is from Father's Day. She read quietly. To the strongest man I know. Thank you for teaching me that character matters more than titles. Vanessa smiled through tears. Keep going. Laya continued. Family cookouts. Christmas dinners. Army ceremonies. Fishing trips. Birthday celebrations. Everything looked normal. Everything looked happy. Then she stopped. Laya. I found something. What? It's from. She looked at the date. February 12th. Vanessa's birthday. Laya slowly handed her the phone. The picture showed the same soldier sitting alone on a porch. In his hands, he held a photograph of a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. The caption simply read, Happy birthday to my little lady. I pray you're healthy. I pray you're happy. Daddy loves you, and one day I hope we'll find each other. Vanessa covered her mouth. The tears came instantly. No. She whispered. No. Laya wrapped an arm around her. My whole life. Vanessa sobbed. She lied. She looked back down at the picture. He never stopped looking. Laya hugged her tighter. You don't know the whole story yet. I know enough. Vanessa cried openly now. I hated him. She buried her face in Laya's shoulder. I thought he abandoned me. She couldn't stop shaking. I blamed him. For everything. Laya gently rubbed circles across her back. You were a little girl. Vanessa cried harder. My daddy loved me. The words broke something inside her. Years of pain. Years of anger. Years of wondering why she wasn't enough. Collapsed all at once. Laya began crying with her. I've got you. Vanessa nodded. I know. For several minutes. Neither of them spoke. The room was silent except for tears. Finally, Laya picked up the phone. So. Vanessa looked up. What do you want to do? Vanessa stared at the message request. I don't know. What does your heart say? She looked down. My heart says. She smiled through tears. I want my daddy. Laya nodded. Then maybe. She gently placed the phone back into Vanessa's hands. It's time. Vanessa's thumb hovered over the accept request button. She couldn't press it. What if? She whispered. What if he doesn't want me now? Laya looked almost offended. You just read a birthday post. Vanessa laughed through her tears. I know. You think a man who posts birthday messages to a daughter he can't find. She smiled. Doesn't want her. Vanessa slowly shook her head. No. You deserve this. Laya reached over. Placed her finger on top of Vanessa's trembling hand. Together. They pressed the button. Follow request accepted. Neither of them said anything. They simply stared at the screen. Vanessa whispered a prayer. Please let this be real. Days passed. Nothing. Vanessa checked her phone every morning. Nothing. Between classes. Nothing. Before bed. Nothing. She hated herself for looking so often. She tried convincing herself she didn't care. But she did. Every notification made her heart race. Every vibration made her hope. Every disappointment hurt. One evening Laya looked across the room. You checked again. Vanessa sighed. I know. You said you weren't. I lied. Laya smiled. It's okay. What if he changed his mind? He won't. What if? He won't. Laya walked over and gently took the phone away. You've waited 20 years. She smiled. You can wait a little longer. Christmas break arrived. Campus emptied. Students packed cars. Parents hugged children. The residence halls grew quiet. Vanessa looked at her suitcase. Laya noticed. You okay? Vanessa forced a smile. I'm going home. Laya nodded slowly. You don't sound excited. Vanessa shrugged. It's still my mom. Laya hugged her. If you need me. I know. You call. I promise. The ride home felt longer than usual. As Vanessa pulled into the driveway, she noticed Ashley's car, TJ's truck, Evelyn's car. Everyone was home. She smiled to herself. Maybe Christmas will be different. She carried her bags inside. Merry Christmas. Ashley looked up from the kitchen. She had clearly been drinking. You finally decided to come home. Vanessa set her bags down. I just got here. Ashley laughed bitterly. You should have stayed with your little college friends. Mom. I mean it. Vanessa looked confused. What did I do? Ashley slammed her glass onto the counter. You think you're too good for us now. I never said that. You don't have to. TJ stood up from the couch. Ma. Ashley ignored him. You got your little scholarship. You think you special. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I never said that. Ashley pointed toward the front door. You got that coach. You got that little volleyball girl. You got your new family. So go be with them. The room fell silent. Vanessa couldn't believe what she was hearing. Ashley looked her directly in the eyes. Then said the words that would stay with Vanessa forever. You were the biggest mistake I ever made. The room froze. TJ stood. Ma. Enough. He walked toward her. You tripping. Ashley turned on him. You stay out of it. Vanessa felt her knees weaken. Her own mother had just called her a mistake. Without another word, she picked up her bag, turned around, and walked out the front door. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she couldn't stay there another second. The cold December air hit Vanessa's face as she walked down the front steps. She didn't look back. She couldn't. If she did, she knew she would break. Tears streamed down her face as she wandered aimlessly through the neighborhood she had called home her entire life. Christmas lights hung from houses up and down the street. Families laughed inside warm living rooms. Children pressed their faces against windows waiting for Santa. It was supposed to be the happiest time of the year. Vanessa had never felt more alone. She climbed into her car and started the engine. For several minutes, she simply sat there. She had nowhere to go. She thought about Coach Lance. No. She whispered. I can't ruin their Christmas. She thought about getting a hotel. She didn't have enough money. She looked at the dashboard clock. 9:42 p.m. Without even realizing where she was driving, her hands guided the car toward the one place that had always brought her peace. The old track at her high school. The stadium lights were off. The gates had been left unlocked. The only light came from the moon reflecting across the empty lanes. Vanessa stepped onto the track. The silence wrapped around her. She slowly removed her hoodie, placed it on the bleachers, looked down lane 4, and started running. Not for speed. Not for time. Not for training. She ran because she didn't know what else to do. One lap. Then another. The tears never stopped. Every painful memory surfaced. Your daddy doesn't love you. You'll never amount to anything. You're wasting your time. You're my biggest mistake. She screamed into the empty night. Why? Her voice echoed across the stadium. What did I do? No answer. She kept running. Again. 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 Until finally, her legs gave out. She collapsed in lane 1, curled into a ball, and cried. For the little girl who never had a chance. For the teenager who kept hoping. For the young woman who still wanted nothing more than to hear. I'm proud of you. Nearly 20 minutes later, her phone vibrated. Laya calling. Vanessa stared at the screen. She almost ignored it. Instead, she answered. Hello. Laya immediately sat upright in her bedroom. Something was wrong. She had never heard Vanessa sound like that. Where are you? I'm okay. Vanessa. Silence. Where are you? Vanessa finally answered. The track. What track? My old high school. Laya looked toward the living room. Coach Lance and Letitia were watching a Christmas movie. She quietly stood. I'll call you right back. Laya walked into the living room. Coach Lance looked up. Everything okay? Laya shook her head. No. Letitia muted the television. What happened? Laya's voice cracked. I think Ashley threw Vanessa out. Coach Lance was already standing. What? She's at her old high school. Without another word, Lance grabbed his truck keys. Let's go. Laya called Vanessa back as they drove. You still there? Yeah. Stay where you are. Laya. We're coming. No. I don't want to mess up y'all Christmas. Laya smiled through tears. You really think we'd leave you out there by yourself? I'll be okay. Coach Lance reached over and pressed the speakerphone button. No, you won't. Vanessa immediately recognized his voice. Coach. Stay right where you are. I don't want to bother y'all. Vanessa. His tone became firm. Listen to me. She quietly sniffled. Yes, sir. You became family a long time ago. Tears rolled down her face again. He interrupted gently. You hear me? Yes, sir. We'll be there in 10 minutes. When Coach Lance's truck pulled into the school parking lot, the headlights illuminated a lone figure sitting on the bleachers. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself trying to stay warm. Laya jumped out before the truck even stopped. She ran straight toward her. Without saying a word, she wrapped both arms around Vanessa. The two young women stood there crying together. Coach Lance slowly walked over. He didn't ask questions. He simply took off his jacket and draped it across Vanessa's shoulders. You cold? She nodded. A little. Letitia gently brushed tears from Vanessa's face. You haven't eaten? Vanessa shook her head. No, ma'am. Well. Letitia smiled. You're fixing too. Vanessa looked confused. What? Lance smiled. You coming home? Vanessa quickly shook her head. No. Why not? It's Christmas. Lance looked at her almost offended. I know it is. I don't want to interrupt your family. He stepped closer. Young lady. His voice softened. Look around. Vanessa looked at Laya. Then Letitia. Then him. This is your family. She broke down again. Coach Lance pulled her into a hug. For the first time in her life, Vanessa experienced what it felt like to be embraced. Without conditions. Without judgment. Without having to earn it. An hour later, the Williams home was filled with warmth. Christmas music played softly in the background. The smell of baked ham and sweet potato pie filled the kitchen. Laya disappeared upstairs. She returned carrying a neatly folded stack of clothes. I raided my closet. Vanessa laughed through tired eyes. You sure? You already wear half my hoodies anyway. Vanessa smiled. I do. You might as well make it official. Letitia placed a plate of food in front of Vanessa. Eat. Yes, ma'am. Coach Lance sat across from her. You know. What? I've always wanted another daughter. Vanessa looked up. Lance smiled. I guess God finally answered my prayer. Vanessa couldn't speak. Letitia reached across the table and gently covered Vanessa's hand with her own. We've loved you for a long time, baby. You never had to earn that. Vanessa bowed her head. A tear landed on the table. She whispered. I don't know what I did to deserve y'all. Coach Lance smiled. You ran into us. Everyone laughed softly. It was the first genuine laugh Vanessa had shared all day. For the first time, Christmas didn't feel empty. It felt like home. Later that night, long after everyone had gone to bed, Vanessa lay awake in Laya's room. The house was quiet. She stared at the ceiling. Her phone rested on the nightstand. Without thinking, she picked it up. One new notification. Instagram. Her heart skipped. She slowly opened the app. Her hands began to tremble. Across the screen, one message waited. From Deshaun Roberts. Vanessa, if this is really you, I've been praying for this moment for 20 years. Vanessa covered her mouth. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. She whispered into the darkness. Daddy. Vanessa stared at the message. Her vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. She read it again. Then one more time. Vanessa, if this is really you, I've been praying for this moment for 20 years. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it. She didn't know what to say. How do you answer a message 20 years in the making? She wiped her eyes and slowly began typing. Hi. She erased it. This is Vanessa. She erased that too. Nothing felt right. Finally, she stopped trying to sound perfect. She simply wrote what was on her heart. Daddy, it's me. She stared at the screen for a second. Then, she pressed send. Almost immediately, the typing bubble appeared. Vanessa's breathing became shallow. Another message arrived. I don't even know where to begin. I've prayed for this day every birthday, every Christmas, every Father's Day. I never stopped looking for you. The tears came again. She quickly typed. Mom always told me you left us. There was a long pause. Long enough for Vanessa to wonder if she'd said something wrong. Finally, his reply came. I never left you. I left your mother after our relationship ended. I spent years trying to find you. Every lawyer I talked to told me there wasn't much I could do because my name wasn't on your birth certificate. By the time I found out where you were, you'd moved again. I never stopped searching. I just ran out of places to look. Vanessa covered her face. Every lie, every birthday, every tear, suddenly looked different. She typed with trembling hands. I thought you didn't love me. His reply came almost instantly. Baby girl, there has never been a single day that I didn't think about you. Vanessa cried harder than she ever had before. Not because she was hurt. Because for the first time in her life, she felt wanted. Laya stared in her sleep. She woke up and looked at Vanessa focusing at the phone screen. You still awake? Vanessa couldn't speak. She simply held out the phone. Laya quietly walked over and read the messages. By the time she finished, her own eyes were wet. He really was looking. Vanessa nodded. My whole life. She whispered. Comet, I hated the wrong person. Laya sat beside her. You were a child. I blamed him. You believed what you were told. Vanessa stared at another picture on Deshawn's profile. He called me baby girl. Laya smiled. Because that's exactly who you are. The next morning, Coach Lance sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee. The winter air was crisp. He looked up as Vanessa stepped outside wrapped in one of Laya's oversized hoodies. You didn't sleep much. She smiled. No, sir. Are you okay? She nodded. He answered. Lance set his coffee down. Anne. Vanessa handed him the phone. He quietly read each message. When he finished, he took a slow breath. I knew it. Vanessa looked surprised. You did. I knew there had to be more to the story. She looked down. I wasted years blaming him. Lance shook his head. No. You didn't waste anything. I did. No. He looked her in the eyes. Someone stole 20 years from both of you. Vanessa lowered her head. I don't know what to do now. Coach Lance smiled. You answered the text. That's the start. Over the next several days, the messages became phone calls. The phone calls became hours long. Sometimes they talked about sports. Sometimes school. Sometimes nothing important at all. They were simply making up for time. One evening, Deshawn laughed. You still run? Vanessa smiled. A little. A little. She laughed. I run track for South Carolina. Silence. Then. What? She laughed harder. I got a scholarship. His voice cracked. I'm proud of you. Vanessa stopped smiling. Not because she didn't believe him. Because no one had ever said those words with such certainty. You are. Baby girl. He laughed softly. I've been proud of you since before you knew how to tie your shoes. Vanessa wiped away another tear. Thank you. She whispered. Daddy. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Finally, she heard him crying. I've waited 20 years to hear you call me that. Over the next several months, their relationship grew stronger. She met Sonia through video calls. Warm, kind, gentle. Nothing like the woman Vanessa had feared would replace her. Instead, Sonia smiled the first time they spoke. I've heard so much about you. Vanessa smiled nervously. Good things. Sonia laughed. Nothing but. I didn't know if you'd. She hesitated. Want to meet me? Sonia looked almost confused. Honey. She smiled warmly. I've been praying to meet you. Vanessa felt another wall around her heart begin to fall. A few days later, she met Isaiah. A lanky preteen with an easy smile and endless energy. So. He grinned through the video call. You're really my big sister. Vanessa laughed. I guess I am. He smiled. Cool. That's all you got? He shrugged dramatically. I've always wanted an older sister. Vanessa laughed. I've always wanted a little brother. Isaiah smiled. So, what? You gonna beat everybody at the Olympics? Vanessa laughed. I'm gonna try. He pointed toward the camera. You better. Finally. The day arrived. Coach Lance drove Vanessa to Columbia Metropolitan Airport. She stood nervously near the baggage claim. Her palms were sweating. Coach Lance smiled. Nervous? A little. You'll be all right. What if? He interrupted. No what ifs. The automatic doors opened. Passengers began walking out the terminal. Vanessa searched every face. Families embraced. Children laughed. Travelers hurried past. Then, she saw him. A tall man in civilian clothes. His hair carried a little gray around the edges. His eyes searched the crowd the same way hers did. When they met, everything else disappeared. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. Years of missed birthdays. Missed hugs. Missed bedtime stories. Missed father-daughter dances. All stood between them. Deshawn slowly took one step forward. Then another. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. Daddy. His lip trembled. Baby girl. They closed the distance between them. And for the first time in 22 years, a father held his daughter. Neither one wanted to let go. Coach Lance quietly looked away. Letitia slipped her hand into his. You okay? She whispered. He smiled through tears. I've been waiting almost as long as they have. As Deshawn held Vanessa, he whispered the words she had needed to hear since she was 5 years old. I found you. Vanessa buried her face against his shoulder and whispered back. No. She smiled through tears. We found each other. For a long moment. No one moved. The airport faded into the background. People walked around them carrying luggage. Announcements echoed over the loudspeakers. Children laughed. Flights arrived. Flights departed. But none of it mattered. 22 years had disappeared in a single embrace. Deshawn finally stepped back just enough to look at his daughter. He gently placed both hands on her face. My God. His voice trembled. You look just like your grandmother. Vanessa laughed through her tears. I do. He nodded. Your smile. He smiled back. That's my mama. Vanessa wiped her cheeks. I wanted to be in your life the whole time. So have I. Neither of them knew what to say next. Coach Lance walked over and extended his hand. You must be Deshawn. Deshawn smiled warmly and shook it. You must be Coach Lance. I am. Deshawn's eyes filled with gratitude. I've been wanting to meet you almost as much as I've wanted to meet her. Coach Lance smiled. You don't owe me anything. Deshawn shook his head. I owe you more than you'll ever know. He looked over at Vanessa. You were there for daughter when I couldn't be. Coach Lance quickly corrected him. No. I just coached her. Deshawn smiled. From everything she's told me. He glanced back toward Lance. You did a whole lot more than coach. For a second. Neither man spoke. There was an understanding between them that words couldn't explain. One man had given Vanessa life. The other had helped her live it. Deshawn stepped forward and wrapped Coach Lance in a hug. Thank you. Coach Lance quietly patted him on the back. Take good care of her. Deshawn smiled. I plan to. Coach Lance chuckled. So do I. They both laughed. Waiting a few feet away stood Sonia. She smiled patiently, giving father and daughter their moment. When Vanessa finally looked toward her, Sonia opened her arms. I hope it's okay. She smiled gently. If I hug you too. Vanessa didn't hesitate. She walked straight into Sonia's embrace. Thank you. Sonia looked confused. For what? For loving my daddy. Sonia kissed the top of her head. That man has loved you since the day I met him. Vanessa looked surprised. He talked about me. Sonia laughed softly. Honey. She smiled. I've heard your name for almost 15 years. Vanessa felt another tear roll down her face. There wasn't a birthday. Sonia continued. That he didn't buy a card. Vanessa blinked. A card. Deshawn smiled. They're all at home. She looked at him. You kept them. He nodded. Every single one. I never got them. I know. He swallowed hard. But I couldn't bring myself to throw them away. A young man carrying 2 duffel bags finally spoke up. So. Everyone looked toward him. I've been standing here forever. The room erupted in laughter. Deshaun smiled. Vanessa. He pointed. This is your little brother. Isaiah walked over with a grin. He was taller than Vanessa expected. So. He shrugged dramatically. You gonna hug me or what? Vanessa laughed. I guess. He wrapped his arms around her. Cool. She smiled. You're taller than me. I know. You don't have to sound so proud. I am. Everyone laughed again. Isaiah looked at her medals on the wallpaper of her phone. You really fast. Vanessa smiled. I try. He nodded seriously. Good. She looked confused. Why? So when people ask about my sister I can say that she's fast. He grinned. I can say she's the fastest. Vanessa laughed so hard she nearly cried again. Over the next several hours, conversation flowed naturally. They ate lunch at a small restaurant near the airport. Deshaun wanted to know everything. What was your first race like? Terrible. Everyone laughed. What did you major in? Business. What made you choose that? I want to own companies one day. Deshaun smiled proudly. There you go. What about you? He shrugged. The army gave me everything. Vanessa smiled. I've always wanted to ask. What? Were you really looking for me? Deshaun slowly reached into his wallet. I carry something every day. He unfolded an old photograph. The edges were worn. The colors had faded. It showed a tiny baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Vanessa stared at it. That's me. He nodded. The day you were born. You've carried this. She looked closer. All these years. Every deployment. He smiled. Afghanistan. Iraq. Germany. Korea. Everywhere. Vanessa couldn't hold back her tears. I didn't know. I know. He gently folded the picture. I kept believing one day. He smiled at his daughter. I'd finally get to hand it to you. He slid the picture across the table. Vanessa looked at it for a long moment. I can't take this. He shook his head. It belongs to you. She carefully picked it up as though it were priceless. Because to her, it was. Several weeks later, the indoor track season was underway. Vanessa stood at the starting line for her first home meet. The stadium buzzed with excitement. She stretched one last time before walking toward the blocks. As always, she glanced toward the stands. Coach Lance. Letitia. Right where they always were. Then, she looked a few rows over. Her breath caught. Deshaun. Sonia. Isaiah. And standing beside them, Aunt Tasha. They all wore matching garnet shirts. Across the front, in bold white letters, Team Vanessa. Isaiah cupped his hands around his mouth. Let's go, sis. Aunt Tasha laughed. Boy, she can't hear you. I want everybody to hear me. Letitia smiled as she looked toward Sonia. So you're the woman who finally got this stubborn soldier to smile. Sonia laughed. And you're the woman who helped raise our daughter. The two women embraced. I've heard so much about you, Sonia said. Only good things, I hope. Nothing but. The friendship was instant. Coach Lance walked over and shook Aunt Tasha's hand. It's nice to finally meet you. She smiled. Likewise. Then she looked toward Vanessa warming up. You know. She smiled warmly. Our family has been praying for this day longer than you know. Coach Lance looked out toward the track. So have we. The starter called the runners to the line. Vanessa took one last look into the stands. For the first time in her life, there wasn't an empty seat in her heart. The gun sounded. And she ran. Not trying to outrun pain. Not trying to earn love. Not trying to prove her worth. She ran because she was finally free. The indoor season became the best of Vanessa's collegiate career. Every race seemed to build her confidence. Every finish line reminded her how far she had come. When she stumbled, she no longer questioned herself. She adjusted. When she lost, she no longer carried it home. She learned. Coach Reynolds noticed the difference. One afternoon after practice he called her over. Jones. Yes, Coach. What happened to you over Christmas? Vanessa smiled. What do you mean? You came back. He searched for the right words. Lighter. She looked down. I let something go. He nodded. Whatever it was. He smiled. Don't pick it back up. The outdoor season arrived. The NCAA championships were only weeks away. Sports analysts began talking about Vanessa Jones as one of the favorites in both the 100 and 200 meters. Television crews started showing up to practice. One reporter asked the question everyone else wanted answered. What changed? Vanessa smiled. I found peace. The reporter looked confused. What does that mean? It means. She smiled toward Coach Lance. When your heart isn't carrying so much weight. She looked back at the camera. Your legs feel a whole lot lighter. One Saturday afternoon, Coach Lance received an unexpected phone call. Coach Williams. This is he. Hello, Coach. This is Deshaun. Lance smiled. This is unexpected. What's going on, bro? Deshaun laughed. I owe you dinner. Coach Lance chuckled. You don't owe me anything. I insist. There was a brief pause. I'd like to thank the man who helped raise my daughter. Lance smiled softly. I'd like that. The following Friday, the two men met in 5 Points at a small barbecue restaurant. Neither one wore anything fancy. Just jeans, boots, and two men with a lot to talk about. For several minutes they simply exchanged stories. The army, track, life. Finally, Deshaun leaned back in his chair. I've been trying to figure out how to thank you. Lance smiled. You don't have to. I do. Lance shook his head. No. I mean it. You gave Vanessa something I couldn't. Lance looked at him carefully. You know what I gave her? What? A place to believe in herself. Deshaun nodded. Exactly. Lance smiled. You would have done the same thing. If I'd had the chance. The words hung between them. Neither man blamed the other. Neither man competed for Vanessa's love. They both understood something important. Love wasn't something that had to be divided. It multiplied. Deshaun reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cigar case. You smoke? Lance laughed. Every now and then. I brought two. Lance smiled. I had a feeling. The two men stepped outside. They lit their cigars. For several minutes. Neither spoke. Finally Deshaun looked over. You know. What? I've been in the Army 24 years. Lance nodded. Congratulations. I've led soldiers all over the world. He looked out across the parking lot. But raising a daughter. He laughed softly. I don't have the first clue. Lance smiled. You don't have to. Deshaun looked at him. You already know how. You just love her. He nodded. The rest. He shrugged. She'll figure out. A week later. The NCAA Outdoor Championships arrived. The stadium buzzed with energy. Television cameras followed the nation's best athletes. Vanessa stood beneath the tunnel waiting to be introduced. Coach Reynolds gathered the sprinters together. No pressure speeches today. The team laughed. You've trained. You've sacrificed. Now go enjoy it. Vanessa smiled. Yes, Coach. As she walked toward the track, she looked into the stands. Coach Lance. Letitia. Laya. Deshaun. Sonia. Isaiah. Aunt Tasha. Coach Daniels. Even several of her old high school teammates had made the trip. One seat remained empty. Ashley. Vanessa noticed it. Then quietly looked away. Some absences. No longer had the power to break her. The women's 100-meter final was electric. The crowd rose to its feet. Ladies. On your marks. Vanessa lowered herself into the blocks. She closed her eyes. Not to pray for victory. Just to say thank you. No matter what happens. She smiled to herself. I'm already blessed. The gun exploded. She got out clean. Powerful. Controlled. At 40 meters. She was even. At 60. She surged. At 80. The race belonged to her. She leaned through the line. Silence. Then. The scoreboard lit up. Lane 5. Vanessa Jones. First place. The stadium erupted. Laya jumped so high she nearly spilled her drink. That's my sister. Isaiah screamed at the top of his lungs. Let's go, sis. Coach Lance didn't move. He simply smiled. The same proud smile he'd worn the day he met a little girl running barefoot around a neighborhood park. Letitia hugged him tightly. You did it. He quietly shook his head. No. His eyes never left Vanessa. She did. An hour later. Vanessa stood on top of the podium. The gold medal rested against her chest. As the national anthem played, she looked toward the sky, then into the crowd. She found Coach Lance. He placed his hand over his heart. She smiled. Then she found Deshaun. He stood at attention. Military posture. Eyes filled with tears. He saluted. Vanessa instinctively smiled back and gave him a small nod. It wasn't planned. It wasn't rehearsed. It was simply a daughter acknowledging her father. For both of them, it meant everything. The announcer's voice echoed through the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, your NCAA national champion in the 100 meters, Vanessa Jones. The crowd rose once again. But Vanessa wasn't finished. She still had one more race to run. The 200 meters. And another dream waiting just beyond the next finish line. Vanessa barely had time to celebrate. The women's 200-meter final was scheduled later that evening. She sat in the athlete recovery area with an ice towel wrapped around her neck. Coach Reynolds walked over carrying a bottle of water. Proud of you. Vanessa smiled. Thank you, Coach. He handed her the bottle. You got one more job. She laughed. I know. He pointed toward the track. No. She looked confused. I don't mean winning. What then? I want you to enjoy it. She smiled. I will. I mean really enjoy it. He looked directly into her eyes. You've spent your whole life trying to prove you belonged. He paused. You don't have to prove anything anymore. Meanwhile, the family had gathered beneath the stadium. Isaiah was still talking a mile a minute. My sister is a national champion. Aunt Tasha laughed. We know, baby. No. He shook his head dramatically. You don't understand. He pointed toward Vanessa's picture on the giant video board. That's my sister. Everyone laughed. Laya walked over and bumped him with her shoulder. Calm down. I can't. She smiled. I know. Sonia looked at Letitia. You know something. What? I've never seen that girl smile this much. Letitia looked toward Vanessa stretching on the infield. Neither have I. Coach Lance quietly stood by himself near the rail. Deshaun walked over. You all right? Lance smiled. I've just been thinking about the first day I met her. Deshaun looked toward the track. What was she like? Lance chuckled. Scared. Quiet. Heartbroken. He smiled. But stubborn. Deshaun laughed. She still is. Lance nodded. I tried to convince her she was fast. What did she say? She said her mama told her she wasn't worth the time. Deshaun closed his eyes for a moment. His jaw tightened. I missed so much. Lance placed a hand on his shoulder. You didn't miss this. He nodded toward the track. You're here now. The announcement echoed through the stadium. Women's 200-meter final. Report to the starting area. Vanessa stood. She took one deep breath. Then slowly walked toward the tunnel. As she passed the stands, she heard a familiar voice. Hey sis. She turned. Laya stood on the front row. You know what to do. Vanessa smiled. I know. No. Laya laughed. You don't. The people around them smiled as Laya pointed toward the finish line. Go have fun. Vanessa laughed. I love you. Laya placed both hands around her mouth. I love you too. The athletes settled into their lanes. Lane 4. Vanessa Jones. University of South Carolina. Two-time NCAA champion. At least. She hoped. The starter raised the pistol. On your marks. Vanessa lowered into the blocks. She closed her eyes for one final second. Then, something unexpected happened. She wasn't thinking about medals. She wasn't thinking about Olympic dreams. She wasn't thinking about proving Ashley wrong. Instead, she saw memories. A cracked neighborhood track. Old and worn track shoes. Coach Lance teaching her how to drive out of the blocks. Letitia handing her sandwiches. Laya making her laugh. Daddy Sean's first hug. Isaiah yelling. Let's go, sis. For the first time in her life, running wasn't about escaping. It was about celebrating. Set. The gun exploded. Vanessa flew around the curve. She felt smooth. Relaxed. Controlled. Halfway through the race, she was even with the field. Coming off the turn, she shifted gears. Coach Reynolds smiled. There it is. Coach Lance nodded. Finish. Vanessa lifted her knees. Stayed relaxed. Powered through the line. She leaned. The race was over. She looked immediately toward the scoreboard. Seconds felt like minutes. Finally, the screen flashed. Lane 4. Vanessa Jones. First place. NCAA champion. Again. Vanessa covered her face. She couldn't stop crying. 2 races. 2 gold medals. She had done it. The medal ceremony felt surreal. Standing atop the podium once again. The second gold medal rested around her neck. The announcer's voice echoed throughout the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, your NCAA champion in both the 100 and 200 meters. Vanessa Jones. The applause seemed endless. As she stepped down from the podium, she didn't run toward the cameras. She didn't run toward reporters. She ran straight toward her family. Leah reached her first. She tackled Vanessa into a hug. I told you. Vanessa laughed through tears. You did. Coach Lance wrapped both of them in his arms. I am so proud of you. Those words still carried the same weight. Letitia kissed Vanessa on both cheeks. My baby. Sonia hugged her next. You've worked so hard. Isaiah proudly held both medals in the air. My sister got 2. Everyone laughed. Then, Vanessa walked toward Deshaun. Neither one said anything. She simply placed both medals around his neck. He looked surprised. Baby girl. She smiled. You carried me before I could walk. She glanced toward Coach Lance. And Coach carried me when I wanted to quit. She looked back at her father. You wear them. Deshaun slowly removed the medals and placed them back around Vanessa's neck. No. His voice cracked. They belong exactly where they are. He gently rested his forehead against hers. I've missed a lot of moments. He smiled proudly. But nobody. He looked directly into his daughter's eyes. Kama is going to miss me telling you this. He took a deep breath. I'm proud of you. Vanessa closed her eyes. The little girl who had spent years waiting to hear those words finally heard them. And somehow, they sounded even better than she had imagined. The months that followed became some of the happiest Vanessa had ever experienced. Not because life had suddenly become perfect, but because she finally understood something Coach Lance had been trying to teach her for years. Peace wasn't found when everyone accepted you. Peace came when you accepted yourself. The summer after her junior season was filled with new experiences. For the first time, Vanessa spent a weekend in Fayetteville, North Carolina, visiting Deshaun and his family near Fort Bragg. The moment she pulled into the driveway, Isaiah burst through the front door before the car had even stopped. Sis. Vanessa laughed as he wrapped his arms around her. You getting taller every time I see you. I know. You gonna stop? Nope. She smiled. I was afraid you were gonna forget about me. Isaiah looked offended. Forget. He shook his head. I waited my whole life to have a sister. He smiled. I ain't letting you go nowhere. Inside the house, family pictures covered the walls. Military awards. Certificates. Christmas photographs. Birthday celebrations. Vanessa slowly walked through the hallway. Then, she stopped. An entire section of the wall was filled with birthday cards. 18 of them. One for every year since he left Columbia cause the Army said it was time to go to a new base. Each one still sealed. Each one addressed. To my baby girl. Vanessa slowly reached toward one. You kept them. Deshaun nodded. I bought one every year. Her fingers gently traced the envelopes. You knew I'd never get them. I did. So why? He smiled softly. Because I believed. He paused. One day I'd hand them to you myself. Vanessa could no longer hold back her tears. She hugged him tightly. I've missed so much. So have I. That evening, the family gathered around the dinner table. Laughter echoed through the house. Stories were shared. Isaiah couldn't stop asking questions. So, he looked at Vanessa. You famous now? She laughed. No. I saw you on ESPN. So did a lot of people. He smiled proudly. My friends don't believe you're really my sister. Vanessa grinned. What did you tell them? I told them to watch me prove it. Everyone laughed. Sonia smiled as she watched the siblings joke with one another. She quietly leaned toward Deshaun. They look like they've known each other forever. Deshaun smiled. That's because love doesn't always need time. The following morning, Deshaun walked into the garage carrying a small box. I've been waiting to give you this. Vanessa looked inside. A pair of tiny pink running shoes. She laughed. What are these? The first shoes I ever bought you. She looked at him. You kept these too. He nodded. I figured. He smiled. If I couldn't watch you grow. I'd hold on to the things that reminded me you were growing somewhere. Vanessa gently held the tiny shoes in her hands. For the first time, she truly understood. He had never forgotten her. Not for a single day. When Vanessa returned to Columbia, college life resumed. Senior year arrived quickly. Expectations were even higher than before. Sports analysts predicted she would defend her national titles. Professional sponsors began calling. One afternoon, Coach Reynolds called her into his office. Close the door. Vanessa sat down. Everything okay? He smiled. Better than okay. He slid 2 folders across the desk. What are these? Your first nil opportunities. Vanessa looked confused. They want to partner with me. Coach Reynolds nodded. They don't just want your speed. He smiled. They want your story. Vanessa quietly stared at the folders. For years, she had been told she wasn't enough. Now, companies believed she was worth investing in. Later that afternoon, she met Laya at their favorite coffee shop. Laya immediately noticed the excitement on Vanessa's face. What happened? Vanessa slid the folders across the table. Laya opened the first one. Then the second. Her eyes grew wide. You serious? Vanessa nodded. I signed 2 nil deals. Laya jumped out of her chair. The people inside the cafe looked over. She didn't care. She hugged Vanessa tightly. I told you. Vanessa laughed. You tell me everything. Because I'm always right. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Whatever. Laya smiled. So. What? We celebrating? Vanessa grinned. Absolutely. Over dinner. The conversation drifted away from track. Laya leaned back in her chair. You know what I've been thinking. Vanessa smiled. That scares me. I'm serious. What? We've spent all this time talking about building wealth. Vanessa nodded. So. What if we actually did it? She looked confused. How? Laya pulled out a notebook. Real estate. Vanessa leaned forward. You serious? As a heart attack. We're both going for business degrees. We've got connections. We've got social media. And now. She pointed toward the nil contracts. We've got capital. Vanessa smiled. I like where this is going. Laya grinned. I knew you would. The 2 friends spent nearly 3 hours filling pages with ideas. Business names. Investment goals. Rental properties. Community development. By the time they left the restaurant, they weren't just best friends. They had become business partners. Across town, Coach Lance sat on his back porch watching the sunset. Letitia carried 2 glasses of sweet tea outside. You've been smiling all evening. He laughed. I have. You know you have. He looked out toward the horizon. I got to thinking. About Vanessa. About both the girls. I met a little girl who thought she wasn't worth anybody's time. Letitia smiled softly. And now? Lance chuckled. Now she's building businesses. Winning national championships. Finding her father. Inspiring people she doesn't even know. She built a relationship with Laya. They both love each other like they are real sisters. He looked at his wife. God sure knows what he's doing. Letitia reached over and took his hand. He always did. Lance smiled. We just had the privilege of watching it. Vanessa had finally found the life she never thought she deserved. She had no idea that her greatest challenge was still waiting just ahead. Senior year began exactly the way everyone expected. Vanessa Jones wasn't just one of the fastest women in college track anymore. She had become one of the faces of collegiate athletics. Her nil partnerships continued to grow. The podcast she and Laya started between classes slowly began attracting listeners from across the country. Every Monday night they sat behind microphones, laughing, telling stories about college life, sports, faith, and perseverance. Neither of them expected much from it. They simply wanted a place where people could feel encouraged. Within 6 months, the podcast reached 50,000 subscribers. By spring, it had passed 100,000. Then, 150,000. Laya stared at the analytics on her laptop. We hit 150. Vanessa looked over. No way. I'm serious. Vanessa laughed. We really got people listening to us. Laya smiled. I told you people like authenticity. Vanessa grinned. They mostly like you. Laya pointed a finger at her. Don't start. The two burst into laughter. On the track, everything was falling into place. Vanessa defended her conference titles in the 100 and 200. Professional scouts regularly attended meets. Commentators openly discussed her chances of making the national team after graduation. Coach Reynolds reminded her daily. Stay where your feet are. She smiled. Yes, coach. Don't race next month today. I know. One race at a time. One afternoon after practice. Coach Lance stood at the finish line holding his stopwatch. Again. Vanessa laughed. You've timed this start 6 times. I know. You got the result. I know. So why again? He smiled. Because champions don't practice until they get it right. He looked at her seriously. They practice until they can't get it wrong. Vanessa nodded. She walked back to the blocks. A week later, the regional championships arrived. It was the final major meet before nationals. The stadium was packed. Television cameras lined the straightaway. Vanessa stretched calmly behind lane 4. Laya walked over carrying 2 bottles of water. You good? Vanessa smiled. I feel great. You nervous? A little. Laya bumped her shoulder. Good. Why? It means you still care. Vanessa laughed. You always got something. I do. The starter called the athletes forward. Ladies. On your marks. Vanessa settled into the blocks. The gun sounded. She exploded around the curve. Everything felt smooth. 40 meters. 60. 80. She was pulling away. Then. It happened. The runner in lane 5 stumbled. Her foot crossed the lane line. Vanessa saw it. She tried to avoid her. There wasn't enough room. Their spikes tangled. The collision sent both women crashing to the track. The stadium gasped. Vanessa hit shoulder first. Her left knee twisted underneath her body. A scream escaped before she could stop it. Pain shot through her entire leg. She grabbed her knee. No. Medical personnel sprinted across the track. Coach Reynolds jumped the rail before officials stopped him. Vanessa. Laya was already crying. Coach Lance stood frozen. He had seen athletes get hurt before. But this felt different. Vanessa tried to move. The pain was unbearable. She looked down. Her knee didn't feel right. Something inside her knew. She whispered through tears. Coach. Coach Reynolds knelt beside her. I'm here. She looked at him. I think. Her voice broke. Comet, I heard it pop. His heart sank. He tried not to show it. We're going to get you checked. Vanessa closed her eyes. She wasn't thinking about the pain. She wasn't thinking about the race. She was thinking about everything she had worked for. National championships. The national team. The Olympics. She prayed. Please don't let this be the end. Several hours later, the MRI results confirmed everyone's fears. Coach Reynolds sat beside Vanessa in the examination room. The orthopedic surgeon quietly folded his hands. I'm sorry. The room became silent. You've torn your ACL. Vanessa stared straight ahead. The doctor continued. There are additional ligament injuries as well. No one spoke. Surgery will be necessary. Vanessa finally looked up. How long? The doctor hesitated. Recovery varies. She looked directly into his eyes. When can I run again? He sighed. If everything goes well. 9 to 12 months. The words hit harder than the injury itself. 9 months. A year. Her senior season was over. National championships. Gone. Her chance to qualify that year. Gone. She slowly lowered her head. For the first time since she was a little girl, running had been taken away from her. Outside the room, Laya stood waiting. The moment she saw Vanessa on crutches, she knew. Without saying a word, she wrapped her best friend in a hug. Vanessa buried her face against Laya's shoulder. I worked so hard. I know. I was so close. I know. What if? Laya gently held Vanessa's face. No. What? We're not doing what if. Vanessa wiped away tears. My dream. Laya shook her head. Your dream got delayed. She smiled softly. It didn't die. Vanessa looked at her. You promise? Laya squeezed her hand. I promise. That evening, the family gathered at Coach Lance's house. Nobody wanted Vanessa to be alone. Coach Lance stood beside the fireplace, looking around the room. Deshawn, Sonia, Isaiah, Aunt Tasha, Letitia, Laya. Everyone was there. No one knew exactly what to say. Finally, Coach Lance broke the silence. You know. Everyone looked toward him. I've been thinking about something. What? Vanessa asked quietly. He smiled. The fastest race I ever saw you run. She looked confused. Kama wasn't on a track. She frowned. It was the day an 8-year-old little girl decided. He looked directly into her eyes. Kama that she wasn't going to let the world tell her who she was. The room became quiet. You've already beaten harder things than this. He walked over and gently rested a hand on her shoulder. So if anybody thinks this injury is the end of Vanessa Jones. He smiled. They don't know my girl. For the first time since the accident. Vanessa smiled. Small. But genuine. Because deep inside, she still believed. The surgery lasted just over 3 hours. For Vanessa, it felt like her life had been placed on pause. The doctors were optimistic. The reconstruction had gone well. Now came the hardest part. Recovery. Not the physical pain. The patience. The first few weeks tested every ounce of her faith. The woman who had once run 200 meters in under 23 seconds. Now celebrated taking 10 steps without assistance. Some mornings, simply getting out of bed felt like winning a race. One afternoon she sat quietly in the physical therapy clinic staring at the parallel bars. The therapist smiled. Ready? Vanessa looked down at her brace. I don't know. You've got this. She shook her head. I used to run. The therapist smiled warmly. Today. She pointed toward the bars. Your race is 20 feet. Vanessa took a deep breath. One step. Then another. Each movement hurt. Halfway down the bar she stopped. Tears filled her eyes. I hate this. The therapist nodded. I know. I used to be fast. She smiled. And today. She pointed ahead. You're brave. Outside. Coach Lance watched through the therapy room window. Letitia stood beside him. She'll get there. Lance nodded. I know. You worried. He smiled. I always worry. Letitia laughed. That's because you love her. Vanessa refused to let the injury define her. When she couldn't train, she studied. She poured herself into classes. She and Laya expanded their podcast. Every Monday night became therapy for both of them. One evening during a live episode, Laya looked across the microphones. So. Vanessa smiled. So. If somebody out there feels like giving up. She leaned back in her chair. What would you tell them? Vanessa thought for a moment. I'd tell them. She smiled softly. Don't confuse a detour with a dead end. The live chat exploded. Comments flooded the screen. I needed that. Thank you. You don't know how much this helped. Laya quietly smiled. You were supposed to say that. Vanessa laughed. I guess. The podcast continued growing. 160,000 subscribers. 175,000. Then 200,000. Companies reached out for partnerships. Athletes asked to be interviewed. Motivational speakers wanted collaborations. Laya laughed one afternoon while looking at the analytics. You realize. What? We accidentally built a business. Vanessa smiled. We sure did. The real estate company also began taking shape. Deshawn sat around the dining room table one weekend with Vanessa and Laya. Business plans covered every inch of the table. So. He looked at both young women. Walk me through it. Laya pointed toward a presentation. We're starting small. Buying distressed properties. Renovating them. Renting some. Reselling others. Deshawn smiled. You've done your homework. Vanessa nodded. We want to build wealth. But we also want to help neighborhoods. He looked proudly at the two young women. I've been saving for retirement for a long time. They both looked at him. I want to invest. Vanessa blinked. Daddy. He smiled. I'm serious. You believe in this. I believe in both of you. He reached into a folder and slid a check across the table. Vanessa looked at the amount. Her eyes widened. Daddy. She looked at him in disbelief. This is. He interrupted with a smile. An investment. Not a gift. I expect a return. Lyle laughed. There he goes sounding like a businessman. Deshawn grinned. I spent 24 years leading soldiers. I know how to spot good leaders. He pointed toward both young women. And I'm looking at two of them. Meanwhile, TJ's life had begun changing too. After reconnecting with Deshawn, something inside him shifted. He called one evening. Hey. What's up? Vanessa asked. You busy? A little. I need to ask you something. What? You think? He hesitated. Your dad would talk to me. Vanessa smiled. About what? The army. She paused. You serious? I've done a lot of thinking. His voice sounded different. Calmer. More mature. I wasted a lot of years blaming everybody else. He sighed. I want to be better. For my son. Vanessa smiled. I think he'd love that. A week later, TJ sat across from Deshawn at a small diner in Columbia. For several minutes. Neither of them mentioned the past. Finally TJ spoke. I owe you an apology. Deshawn looked surprised. For what? I judged you. He looked down at his coffee. I believed everything I was told. Deshawn nodded. I understand. No. TJ shook his head. I was old enough to ask questions. He looked back up. I didn't. Silence. Then Deshawn smiled. What do you want to do now? TJ took a deep breath. I want to get back in. The army. He nodded. I know I got an other than honorable discharge. I know I need waivers. I know it ain't easy. But. He smiled. I finally got something worth fighting for. He pulled out his phone. A picture of his little boy filled the screen. I want him to grow up proud of me. Deshawn smiled. I've got a recruiter buddy at Fort Bragg. TJ's eyes widened. You serious? I'll make a phone call. TJ leaned back in his chair. I appreciate you. Deshawn smiled. You don't owe me anything. TJ laughed. You and Coach Lance got that saying in common. Weeks later, TJ called Vanessa. Sis. What? I got the waiver. Vanessa jumped off the couch. No way. I'm going back in. She laughed so loudly Laya came running into the room. What happened? Vanessa put the phone on speaker. TJ couldn't stop smiling. They approved everything. Laya screamed. Let's go. TJ laughed. I ain't gonna lie. What? I cried. Vanessa smiled. It's okay. So did I. TJ grew quiet. You know. What? I think. He paused. Daddy Sean saved my life. Vanessa smiled. No. She looked toward the family picture sitting on the shelf. He just reminded you. Who you were capable of becoming. Across town. Ashley sat alone in her living room. An empty bottle rested beside her chair. The television played quietly in the background. She scrolled through social media. Picture after picture appeared. Vanessa smiling with Deshawn. Vanessa hugging Sonia. Vanessa laughing with Isaiah. Coach Lance. Letitia. Laya. Business meetings. The podcast. National championships. Family dinners. Ashley quietly set the phone down. For the first time. She wasn't angry. She was lonely. She looked around the empty house. TJ was rebuilding his life. Vanessa had built a new one. Even the grandchildren spent more weekends with their father now that he was changing. Ashley reached for another drink. Then stopped. She stared at the glass. Slowly. She pushed it away. Outside. Rain gently tapped against the window. For the first time in years. The silence in the house was louder than the bitterness she had carried. And somewhere deep inside, a woman who had spent decades blaming everyone else, was finally left alone with the one person she could no longer avoid. Herself. Spring slowly gave way to summer. Nearly 10 months had passed since the injury. Every day, Vanessa grew a little stronger. Some days she jogged. Some days she limped. Some days she wondered if she would ever feel like herself again. Coach Lance never let her stay discouraged for long. One humid morning, he stood at the finish line holding his stopwatch. Vanessa slowly jogged the straightaway. When she reached him, she bent over trying to catch her breath. I felt slow. Coach Lance smiled. You were. Vanessa rolled her eyes. You ain't got no filter. He laughed. You asked. I know. He placed the stopwatch in his pocket. But you know what else I saw? What? The same determination I saw when you were 8 years old. She smiled. I was stubborn then. You still are. The rehabilitation sessions became less about surviving and more about preparing. She was finally sprinting again. Not at full speed, but enough to remind herself that she still belonged on the track. One afternoon the physical therapist smiled as Vanessa completed another drill. That's the fastest you've moved since surgery. Vanessa looked down at her knee. It still doesn't feel normal. The therapist nodded. It may never feel exactly the same. Vanessa looked up. So what do I do? The therapist smiled. You stop chasing the old Vanessa. She looked confused. You build the new one. Those words stayed with her long after she left the clinic. Meanwhile, Laya's volleyball team was having the season of a lifetime. The Gamecocks had advanced all the way to the national championship match. Vanessa refused to miss it. Even though she was still wearing a brace. Even though long walks made her knee ache. She stood courtside wearing a shirt that read, "That's my sis." Laya spotted her during warm-ups. She smiled so wide the television cameras caught it. After 5 grueling sets, South Carolina won the national championship. The arena erupted. Confetti filled the air. Players cried. Coaches embraced. Families rushed onto the court. Laya searched through the celebration until she found Vanessa. Without caring about the cameras, she ran straight to her. You came. Vanessa laughed. You think I was missing this? Laya held up the trophy. We did it. Vanessa wrapped her best friend in a hug. No. She smiled proudly. You did it. Laya shook her head. We did. She pointed toward the crowd where Coach Lance, Letitia, Deshawn, Sonia, Isaiah, and Aunt Tasha stood cheering. Our whole family did. Vanessa looked around. The same people who had stood beside her were now standing beside Laya. It wasn't her family anymore. It was theirs. Graduation arrived on a bright May morning. The university lawn overflowed with graduates dressed in garnet and black. Vanessa adjusted her cap. Laya nudged her shoulder. You crying already? Vanessa laughed. I ain't cried yet. You lying. A little. The commencement speaker talked about perseverance, purpose, service. Vanessa barely heard the speech. She spent most of the ceremony looking into the crowd. Coach Lance, Letitia, Daddy Sean, Mama Roberts, Isaiah, Aunt T, TJ, his fiancé, their little boy, even Coach Reynolds. For the first time in her life, she looked into the audience and saw a village. When her name was called, the crowd erupted. Isaiah stood on his chair. That's my sister. People around him laughed. Deshawn proudly clapped. Coach Lance smiled the same quiet smile he'd worn for years. As Vanessa accepted her diploma, she realized something. This piece of paper wasn't just proof she had earned a degree. It was proof that she had broken a cycle. After the ceremony everyone gathered for pictures. Laya looked around. Everybody squeeze in. Coach Lance stood beside Deshawn. Letitia beside Sonia. TJ held his son. Isaiah stood with one arm around Vanessa. The photographer smiled. Everybody say. Before he could finish, Isaiah shouted. Family. Everyone burst into laughter. The camera flashed. No one realized it then. But that picture would become one of Vanessa's favorites. Not because everyone looked perfect. Because everyone belonged. Later that evening, the family gathered at Coach Lance's house for a graduation cookout. The grill smoked in the backyard. Music played softly. Children laughed. Isaiah and TJ's son tossed a football back and forth. Laya walked onto the deck carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed one to Vanessa. So, what? You still thinking about the Olympics? Vanessa looked toward the sunset. Every day. You scared? A little. You've always been scared. Vanessa smiled. I know. But fear ain't ever stopped you. No. It won't this time either. Vanessa laughed. You really believe I can still do it? Laya looked at her like she'd asked the world's easiest question. I don't believe you can. She smiled. I know you can. Across the yard, Coach Lance and Deshawn watched the 2 young women talking. Deshawn smiled. They've got something special. Lance nodded. They remind me of sisters. Deshawn laughed. They are sisters. Lance looked over. You know. What? I used to pray for Vanessa. So did I. I used to pray she'd find peace. Deshawn smiled. I think she has. Coach Lance looked toward Vanessa, laughing with Laya. I think you're right. As the evening wound down, Vanessa quietly slipped away from the crowd. She walked toward the empty track behind the neighborhood recreation center. It wasn't the same park where she had met Coach Lance, but it felt familiar. She stood in lane 4, looked down the straightaway, then slowly lowered herself into the starting blocks. Coach Lance quietly walked up beside her. You know. She smiled without looking up. I knew you'd find me. I figured this is where you'd be. He stood beside her in silence. You ready? Vanessa nodded. I think so. No. He smiled. I mean. He looked down the lane. Are you ready to stop running from your past? And start running toward your future? Vanessa took a long breath. Then smiled. Yes, coach. He stepped back. Raised his whistle. And for just a second, it felt exactly like it had all those years ago. At the old neighborhood park. He smiled proudly. On your marks. Vanessa settled into position. Every lesson. Every setback. Every tear. Every victory. Had led to this moment. Set. The whistle blew. Vanessa exploded from the blocks. Not because someone doubted her. Not because she had something to prove. But because she finally understood. She had already won the greatest race of her life. The finish line was never a medal. It was becoming the woman God had always intended her to be. The whistle echoed across the empty track. Vanessa's spikes bit into the surface. 1 step. 2. 3. She accelerated down the straightaway. Not at full speed. Not yet. But she was running. Really running. Coach Lance looked down at his stopwatch. Then quietly slipped it back into his pocket. Letitia, who had been watching from the fence, smiled. You didn't even stop the watch. Lance chuckled. I wasn't timing her. What were you doing? He watched Vanessa finish the run before slowly turning back toward his wife. I was watching my daughter get her confidence back. Vanessa jogged back toward them. She was breathing hard. Her knee ached. Her lungs burned. But for the first time since the injury, she smiled without forcing it. How'd I look? Coach Lance folded his arms. You looked like yourself. She laughed. I'll take that. He nodded. You're still not all the way back. I know. But. He smiled. You're headed in the right direction. 3 months later, the national team trials were announced. Sports reporters questioned whether Vanessa would enter. Some believed she would wait another year. Others thought the injury had ended her elite career. One commentator even said, she had a great college career, but sometimes injuries change everything. Vanessa heard every word. This time, she simply smiled. Laya looked over from the kitchen table. You gonna respond? Vanessa shook her head. No. Why not? She smiled. I've spent my whole life answering people. She closed her laptop. I'd rather let my feet do the talking. That Sunday morning, Vanessa woke before sunrise. The house was quiet. She quietly slipped out of bed, walked into the living room, and knelt beside the couch. She bowed her head. Father, thank you. Thank you for every closed door that pushed me toward the right one. Thank you for every race, every loss, every victory, every lesson. She smiled through tears. Thank you for Coach Lance. For Miss Letitia. For Laya. For Daddy Sean. For Mama Roberts. For Aunt T. For Isaiah. For TJ finding his way. She paused. Then quietly whispered. And Father. Please be with my mother. Help her find the peace that took me so many years to find. And please help Evelyn. I don't want them to hurt anymore. Amen. She remained on her knees for another moment. Not because she had more to ask for, but because gratitude was enough. She walked downstairs. The smell of fresh fruit and protein powder filled the kitchen. Laya stood at the counter wearing workout clothes. Without turning around, she smiled. I knew you'd be up. Vanessa laughed. How? I know you. She slid a protein shake across the counter. Breakfast. Vanessa picked it up. You spoil me. Laya grinned. Somebody has to. The front door opened. Coach Lance walked in carrying a gym bag. Behind him, Deshaun stepped through the doorway wearing a gray Army PT shirt. He smiled. You ladies ready? Lyle looked at both men dramatically. I knew it. Knew what? Coach Lance asked. You two are trying to kill us. The room exploded with laughter. Deshaun shrugged. We're just trying to keep up. Lyle pointed toward Vanessa. She can keep up. Then she pointed toward herself. I make business deals. Everyone laughed again. Coach Lance tossed Vanessa the keys to the training facility. You driving? Vanessa caught them with one hand. Let's go. As they walked outside, the morning sun slowly rose over Columbia. The streets were quiet. Birds filled the air with song. Vanessa stopped for just a second. She looked toward the sky. Then toward the people walking beside her. Coach Lance. The man who saw greatness in a little girl before she ever saw it in herself. Letitia. The woman who taught her that love could come from people who shared no blood. Laya. The sister she never knew she needed. Daddy Sean. The father who never stopped searching. Mama Roberts. The woman who loved her without asking her to choose. Isaiah. The little brother who made 20 years disappear with one hug. TJ. A brother who had finally found his own path. Life hadn't erased the pain. It had redeemed it. Vanessa smiled. Y'all ready? Coach Lance blew his whistle. You know the rules. Laya groaned. There are rules. Coach Lance laughed. There have always been rules. Deshaun folded his arms. You heard Coach. Laya looked at Vanessa. See. I told you. They're teaming up now. Vanessa laughed until tears formed in her eyes. Not tears of sadness. Tears of joy. The kind she'd once believed she'd never experience. She took her place at an imaginary starting line. Coach Lance smiled. On your marks. Everyone laughed. Set. For just a moment. Everything became still. The little girl who had once run angrily around a neighborhood track. The teenager who washed dishes with a gold medal sitting beside the sink. The young woman who believed her father had abandoned her. The national champion. The daughter. The sister. The friend. The businesswoman. The survivor. They had all become one person. The whistle sounded. Vanessa pushed forward. Not away from pain. Not toward revenge. But toward purpose. Vanessa running beneath the morning sun with her family beside her. They remembered a little girl who refused to let the people who doubted her determine the woman she would become. As Vanessa entered full stride, she remembered a quote she once seen on a billboard. You cannot always choose where your race begins, but you can choose how you finish. As they crossed the finish line, they all smiled and gave each other high fives. She was complete. The end. If you like this story and want to hear more like it, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We have a lot more original stories of courage, triumph, and the underdog making it out of impossible circumstances.